Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the June 21st Board of Selectmen Sewer Commission meeting. We will call the meeting to order. Chair.
Mr. Chair, all five selectmen are present. Looks like Mr. Andrews absent.
Yes.
Mr. Andrews, the town administrator, is absent.
Okay, the first on the agenda, discussion of the Mass Highway District. Come forward. Oh. And before we start with them, I want to make an announcement to the public. I am requesting that all cell phones and electronic devices be turned off or in a mute position as not to disturb the meeting. Any member of the public also has a right to make an audio or video recording of an open session of a public meeting. A member of the public who wishes to record a meeting must first notify the chair and must comply with reasonable requirements regarding audio or video equipment established by the chair so as not to interfere with the meeting. The chair is required to inform other attendees of such recording at the beginning of the meeting. With that, we'll go with the master. Dot.
Hi, my name is Carrie LaValle. I'm the project manager out of the Boston headquarters for Mass DOT, and we're here to present the Wareham Route 6 and 28 project to you. The main purpose of this meeting is to discuss a letter that was sent to you back in January about the possible discontinuance of this roadway. But at this time, I'd like to introduce the other members that came with me. To my immediate right is Pam Hasner, who is the District 5 projects engineer. To my further right is Bob Gregory, who is also from the District 5 office, and beyond him is Joe Magny, who is the designer from VHB that was hired by Mass DOT. Joe has for us tonight a brief presentation about how the project is proposed to be constructed and what the end result will be, and then we are open for any questions you guys may have.
All right.
Okay, Joe.
Thank you. See some of you again. I think this is our fifth or sixth series of presentations, mostly to the management group and the elected officials. But we also had a presentation at for the business community. It was the Wareham Works Summit on March 26th. Had a very good audience there. So I think it was important to state the project objectives. And I'll get into the limits in a minute. But this is Route 6 and 28, Cranberry Highway. Combined section. And of course, the primary objective is to reconstruct the highway to renew the corridors of viable retail and commercial. I'll try and speak up. Provide and promote safe operations for motorists. Provide safe multimodal accommodations within the project for pedestrians and cyclists. And of course, giving you a roadway that lasts a lifetime, a sustainable construction. Design and construction. So this board, it's hard to see, and I apologize. It's hard to make a board presentation with on a 2-mile project, but we used mostly PowerPoint in our previous presentations. But basically, this is where the double barrel, the one-way couplet ends just east of Tyler Street, and we have a 4-lane highway running the length of Cranberry Highway from the plaza, Cranberry Plaza, 14,000 feet to the Bill Dalton Bridge, and known locally as the Cohasset Narrows Bridge. And that's basically 2.77 miles of 4-lane construction. This graphic's a little better. This graphic is the cross-section of the road. The roadways. If you cut a section of the roadway and you're looking at it from the edge, you see, I feel. Are you? This tells the whole story. Essentially, we're going to construct 4 12-foot lanes separated by a median, a raised median, with constructed of cement concrete and sloped granite edging. The sloped granite edging was requested by your police and your fire and your emergency people in the event that they needed to cross the median for fire or other emergencies. So we have 4 12-foot lanes, a 6-foot median with 1 foot inside shoulders, In addition, we're going to provide 4 feet of shoulder on the outside of the highway for bicycle accommodations, as well as other uses of the shoulder, windrowing, snow, emergency use, and even for collecting drainage in a rainfall event. Adjacent to that, we have no sidewalks today. We're going to construct 2 5.5-foot wide sidewalks supported by granite curbing. This is a very modern approach to a commercial corridor. We've made an attempt to show utility poles. It's not a very good attempt, but the point of it is to illustrate that the utility poles are going to be moved outside the roadway, outside the sidewalk, and they're going to be placed at the back of the walk. The other issue, if you'll note, we show the edge of the existing right-of-way. It's here and again here. And you'll see that it falls inside the total construction cross-section, which means we need to acquire property from abutters. A linear strip taking for the length of the project from every abutter along the route. And basically the State Highway, Mass Highway Department, funds that acquisition and will be working with all the abutters to accommodate them and to accomplish the acquisition. So, some of the details of the improvements, some of the principal details is, first of all, we're going to upgrade signalization. Modern technology, the latest technology and signal equipment at 4 of the locations that have signals today. We're going to upgrade at the Cranberry Plaza, Walmart, at Main Avenue, at Sand Pond Road, and then, of course, at Jefferson Shore Road at Ocean Avenue. Excuse me, Onset Avenue. We're also going to propose a new signal at Red Brook Road. It was warranted back in the 90s when we first started this project. It continues to be strongly warranted. And all the signals will be furnished with push-button accommodation for pedestrians. Wheelchair ramps, pedestrian ramps in all directions to keep pedestrians moving, and that pedestrian accommodation we spoke of as a desire. Also, now today, if you're out there, you can take lefts at any point to access properties. We're going to prohibit lefts because we have a median in the center of the road. So we're going to control where lefts occur. We're going to provide left turn bays at all of the signalized intersections and provide U-turns to change direction at those at 5 locations. Not all of them have U-turns in each direction, and I'll go through that. At Cranberry Plaza, we're going to have a westbound U-turn, something approaching westbound and U-turning to eastbound. At the Walmart Plaza, we'll have U-turns in 2 directions, as well as at Main Avenue and at Red Brook Road. At the Jefferson Shore Road and Onset Road, it'll be an eastbound approach U-turn to the westbound. I did bring a graphic that shows how those are going to work. You've probably seen these before. They have them in this state and basically all the way to Florida. This is a graphic of the 4-lane section. The orange beige represents the sidewalks. The openings represent the driveways. And it's very difficult to see at this distance, but we're going to provide left turn lanes on both approaches, and under signal control, probably under an isolated cycle, traffic will release for a left turn, and those are accommodating not only passenger vehicles but moving vehicles, WB50s. So, and they'll be conducted under signal control, and roughly we have these every couple of thousand feet along the way. So I wanted to use this graphic. I selected this one. There are 14 of these for the entire project. I also wanted to illustrate, and let me put the plan correct. It's upside down. There's existing drainage today that is collected and disposed of at point discharges along the route. Well, under current stormwater management practices, we're obligated to use the best management practices to keep adjacent freshwater and saltwater bodies clean. So, as you can see, we're going to put a brand new system underground, new conduit, catch basins, manholes, with traps and sumps and all the bells and whistles to keep that water clean. but we're also going to dispose of the water into swales and detention ponds so that colloidal material and solids can settle out before they enter the Gibbs Brook or Dick's Pond or Buttermilk Bay. So that's a pretty great feature environmentally for this project. Commercial drive entrances. Today, as you'll notice, a number of businesses have come in and they work with Mass Highway Department to permit their drive entrances. And as they do, the drive entrances get very uniform to control traffic. But there are many properties out there that have not had the opportunity to work with Mass Highway Department to control that, and they have a large sea of pavement, a large curb cut. And of course, what occurs is multiple vehicles entering along the entire, uncontrolled along the entire curb cut, creating lots of points of conflict between moving vehicles and entering cars. Well, we're going to make uniform drive entrances for all the commercial drives so that we'll control and limit the amount of conflicts. Construction traffic management. This is not the kind of corridor where we can divert traffic during construction. It's an important, vital corridor. We're going to keep traffic within the corridor throughout the entire construction phase. But you'll notice that we're widening the road on both sides combined in excess of 20 feet. This gives us the opportunity to put all the traffic on one side and construct on the opposite side. When that's complete, we'll move traffic onto the new construction, build the opposite side of the road, and perhaps on the third phase, construct the median down the middle. Now, the public officials and town managers have been very clear that this is a vital corridor. We recognize that, and they've asked us to consider nighttime and evening construction, keep it out of the prime periods, and we are, during the development of this design, we will consider that to work when in significant off-peak hours to minimize disruption to traffic. So finally, project schedule. As we move forward, our preliminary design is complete. We are now receiving a significant number of comments from the district office and Boston office of Mass DOT, and we'll be poised to go to a design public hearing, a formal process, probably in September, I'm guessing, perhaps. And once that we get through the hearing process, it'll be about 12 to 18 months in design, at which time it gets us to, I've estimated, the spring of 2013, when I think the earliest time that construction can actually start. It'll be 2 years in construction and a cost of $13 million, funded by the feds and state, 80% feds, 20% state, and they're going to acquire all the property as well. I don't think that's in the $13 million. That's separate. So the objective is achieved. We're attempting. This design will build you a modern, convenient, safe, linear commercial park, achieving all the goals of the project. I'm happy to answer any questions for you.
Well, I'll ask the same question that I've asked right from the beginning of this project. This is all in exchange for the town taking ownership of that road. Is that correct?
I'll let the project.
Sure. This project, my name is Pam Hasner. I'm the project development engineer in District 5. And I'd like to thank Chairman Cruz and Mark Andrews, who is not here tonight, but they've been very supportive in working with us all along, as well as former members of the Board of Selectmen and Representative Gifford and Mark Gifford for a number of years. This project was initiated in the 1990s. The project was advanced to the 100% design stage at that time, and due to a number of reasons, it just didn't make it to construction. We were asked in maybe 2006 if we would revisit the location, and we did, and we had a number of meetings prior to advancing the design again through 2007 and 2008, we came to the Board of Selectmen in, I believe it was March of 2008, with the proposed cross-section that Mr. Magny had shown us a few minutes ago, and the board did support it at that time. And after that, we secured Joe Magny's firm, VHB, as the design consultant. And up to this point, the project has been advanced to the 25% design stage. And that's where we are at this point. Route 28, 6 and 28, as you know as well as I do, was the main route to Cape Cod, and it was a main regional route up until, I think it was 1988, when Route 25 was constructed. After that, it became more of a local road, and most of the regional traffic is on Route 25. And as far as state highway purposes, it just doesn't have the significance that it did pre-construction of Route 25. So that's really our main impetus for a discontinuance. And what we are looking to do is to make a major investment of state and federal funds and all the right-of-way and design that's necessary, and then work with you to discontinue the roadway. We're flexible as far as the agreements that happen. Every discontinuance is unique, and we're more than happy to work with you and hear whatever needs that you need, and we can assist you with. And I just also would like to mention that even if this becomes a municipal roadway, it's still eligible for state and federal funds in the future. That doesn't preclude you from securing funds in the future for on the Transportation Improvement Program.
Yeah, thank you for that brief history. One of the questions, and I know that we've talked about this in the past with Mr. Gifford, was especially in the wintertime, where we just currently in the town-owned equipment, and we just don't have that type of equipment to plow that road. And I know that there was some discussion about, as part of the project, to include some heavy equipment for Mr. Gifford to maintain those roads in the winter, or if the state would continue to maintain that road in the winter. And I was just wondering if you had any more information on that, or if there's an update to that, or if it's part of the proposal to Mr. Andrews.
That's something that we can work with you on. I can't offer, specifics as far as we have, this type of plows, but we have in the past worked with communities on that. We recently had a discontinuance in Provincetown, and we did work with the community, and we did plow the road for a number of years after the discontinuance was in effect. So, right. As I mentioned, we can work with you, and if there's particular needs that you have, we can be flexible and try to accommodate you.
Thank you.
Ellen, you have anything? Okay, now for this to go forward, what do you need from us?
Well, right now, there is a process, and I have an SOP that we use for it with the government. We like our standards, but basically, right now we're looking for concurrence that you're willing to work with us, and then we can work on some type of a written agreement and take it from there. But because we've advanced the project to this design stage, we're looking for concurrence in order to help us move it along, and what your feeling is on that.
Okay, as of right now, I know the town administrator does have a group together to check on the signage.
Yes.
And on the easements that you plan on taking. They're already trying to work on that. So it looks like we're moving to that stage, but still yet we need the consensus of the board. And how soon are you waiting for an answer back? Because it may be a while.
Right, there's no specific time frame, but if we're moving in that direction, that is what we're looking for.
Okay.
Maybe. Right now, we're hoping to, but there is extensive right-of-way. The project is nearly 3 miles long. It's complex. I anticipate that it will be ready for advertisement on the 2014 Transportation Improvement Program, which is on the federal fiscal calendar. 2012 starts this October, so it'll be 2 years after that, to have the right-of-way, the design, the environmental permitting, everything complete. We'd like to have an agreement in place prior to construction, if that would be the ideal. But, you know, we'll work with you toward that goal.
I also think it would be helpful if we could have some support possibly before a public hearing is held, just so we have the support from your staff, making sure that what we're presenting to the public is something that can go forward. But I'll be working with you before any hearings set up. And that's not for the agreement. That's just, you know, maybe a letter saying, yes, we're interested in taking over the road or something along those lines.
Okay. Mr. Snyder?
Mr. Chairman, I concur with Selectman Holmes. I'm also a little bit concerned with the costs and the ability of the town to take over that road. And I didn't realize that there was a committee established to look at certain improvements, but I would certainly want to participate, and I would want to make sure that we include the voices of the communities along Route 6, the voices of the businesses along Route 6 and 28 as well. Just find some way to gain that input. And I did take a look at what I assume is a pretty boilerplate document that you provide. And from my standpoint, you know, the town, it would really boil down for me to a negotiation as to what you are willing to provide that's going to mitigate the costs for the town to actually assume the control of that roadway. And I'm just a little bit confused about the process. I'd like to know, you know, what input the Board of Selectmen and the community is going to have beyond what's already taken place.
Well, with our input, it's going to take all 5 of us, majority vote, to get this going, plus the consensus of the public. So we're only spearheading this to show that we're interested. They'll give us all the information. They're doing the legwork, and then we'll come back. And as they alluded to, it's going to take, it won't be tomorrow or next month. It may be a couple months. And by that time, we can have the other boards get on board to make sure that we're doing it right, the right way for the town of Wareham. So.
And my other question is, to be, you know, a little more direct, are these improvements that are being proposed contingent upon the town accepting this roadway as accepting?
I wouldn't say that it's contingent upon it, but there has been an expectation throughout the process that would happen, but we're not saying that you definitely have to have this in order for the project to advance. But there is, I think as Mr. Magny mentioned, this is approximately $13 million, $12 to $13 million of state and federal investment in the construction, quite a bit. I don't know the exact cost, but as far as the design, the state's taking that on and all the right-of-way. So we are making a major investment, and the roadway will be a minimum 20-year lifespan. That's what we designed for, but quite often it lasts quite a bit more than that. And we will work with you as far as any needs that you have, as you know, maintenance needs. We'll do what we can to assist you.
And as you mentioned earlier in your letter, you did allude to the fact that we would receive an increase, I think, in Chapter 90 funds.
Chapter 90 funds, yes.
Is there a specific formula that would be used?
There is a formula on the lane mile. I don't have it with me right now, but there is a formula for the lane miles and the population, and I think they take into account workforce and things like that, yeah.
Is
it's a
that
statewide formula.
Would that be something you could provide to the Board of Selectmen?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I see Mr. Gifford is here. Maybe he or Mr. Burke, through you, could expand on Mr. Schneider's question as to what the status of that task group is, where they're at today, because I'd like to hear that as well. I know there was, I think one or both of you were on that group, right?
Yeah, to answer the question as far as the Chapter 90 monies, this would increase our road miles, and it's a complicated formula. I have it in my office, but it's a matter of your road miles, population, per capita income of people in town, but it would increase our Chapter 90 monies. I'm all in favor of this project. There are a couple of things you have to consider. We would have to take over all the signals. We have no signal department in the town as of now, but it's probably something we would subcontract out. I think it's a great project. It'll clean the corridor of 6 and 28 up immensely as far as signage, and it would be great for the business community. And I really think we should go forward with this.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. As was said, it's a tremendous project that's been in the development stages for a long time, up to $15 million worth of state and federal investment. And one of the major changes that would take place with the widening that would have to be accomplished to get all those great lanes and sidewalks, etc., would be some acquisition of the corridor and certainly a realignment of a lot of the signage that is out there. Currently, we're working with the planning department and also the zoning and planning boards to have a committee that's meeting to develop a new sign ordinance that would be not only reflective of what we want to see in the entire town, but certainly more geared toward the immediate Route 28 Cranberry Highway improvement corridor, and also work with the business community through charrettes that would be set up through Mr. John Charbonneau of the Planning Department and the town administrator working through the Board of Selectmen to work with the business community at large, especially on that corridor, to see what it is they need in order to promote their business within state guidelines for what they use for the state road, and also if we accept it as a town roadway, what we want to see our new 28 Cranberry corridor look like. So those are just in their beginning stages. We'll certainly keep the board informed on any of that. We look forward to the board's participation and bringing back presentations as that develops to the board and the public through this meeting. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burke. Any other questions? Anything else from the state?
One more thing I would like to mention is if you do need our help for presentations with the businesses, if you could just contact us, and we can make sure that one of our representatives, as well as a representative from BHB, was available to kind of go over the project with them in the future.
We sure will. Mr. Mark Gifford? Anything else? Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any announcements? Just go ahead and announce it.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't receive any announcements. However, we do have one that will soon be coming out in a public release here in the next week or so, is that through town meeting, I believe in October, the marathon meeting, town voted to approve a board of road commissioners. There are some specific members on that list that are appointed due to the fact of their office. I believe the police chief was one of them. And we will have an announcement out on July 1st. We'll be taking applications from the general public, and then I believe the schedule will be that we'll have our interviews in the third week of July, and then that board will officially be, we'll do the appointing by the first week of August, and that board will then be complete and active, and we will have completed the town meeting vote and request by the public. So look in the local paper soon. There'll be an application to fill out right after July 1.
If there aren't any other announcements for citizen participation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And members of the board, Bruce Savageau for the record. I have several quick issues to discuss with the board, but before I do, excuse me, I'd just like to encourage the board to support the acquisition of the highway section that was just discussed for two reasons. One is clearly economic development. The other is public safety. That road has been statistically the highest rate of fatalities and major auto accidents and damage than any other route or road in Wareham for some time. And with respect to economic development, we've been bleeding businesses from that area for quite a long time, and one of the obvious reasons is the traffic pattern and the condition of the roads. The paving was helpful, but that roadway needs to be completely re-engineered, and a $13 million to $15 million investment in the community certainly would go a long way in attracting, making a plausible argument to attract businesses to that area once that project is completed. And most businesses decide, storefront businesses decide where they're going to locate based on traffic, but also based on convenience in access. So I would strongly urge that you certainly support that. The issues that I wanted to bring forward, well, first is the town administrator is not here, so Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'll...
Okay, and then I just want to inform you, we're going to limit 3 to 5 minutes on the talk.
I'm sure I can fit it all in.
Well, you already used 2.5, so...
Oh, well, I appeal for another minute.
So, if we keep talking, it'll go up.
Mr. Andrews isn't here, but I did want to ask whether you, Mr. Chairman of the board, could help us understand where we were with the publication of the Westfield RFP. It's not on the state website yet, and I wanted to get a sense publicly from the board where we might be on that.
Okay, we have Mr. Bowen here, and I think he can give us the answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and to my neighbor, Mr. Savageau here. The town administrator and I have just about finished our completion of the review of the edits to the Westfield RFP, and we expect that by probably next Tuesday's meeting, we'll have a final document ready for the board to review.
Okay, thank you.
Short and sweet. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, if I could interrupt Mr. Savageau for a minute.
Yes.
I made a motion some time ago here at the Board of Selectmen which was approved unanimously. And through, I'm not sure if it's really the new board that needs to redo this again, or because of the every other week or the meeting schedule, but I'm going to make another motion tonight that Westfield be on this agenda every week until it's built.
Second.
At every meeting of the Board of Selectmen, I want Westfield on the agenda until it's built, please.
Well, we will put it on as soon as we get the information
Now,
from...
With all due respect, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
if you want to make a motion, we'll see if it's second.
Thank you.
You making a motion?
I did.
I seconded.
Motion made and second. Any questions?
Mr. Chair.
My reason for putting this on, Mr. Chairman, was never about any one specific issue at Westfield. It was so that we as a board, at any meeting, could discuss something that's come up, discuss the timeline, discuss this document, discuss issues dealing with Westfield. And we can't do that if it's not on the agenda. So that's my reason for once again asking to have this put on every week.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead. Kara?
I just want to say that I do believe that a project of this size and magnitude that's being built by the taxpayers for the taxpayers' benefit is something that we should constantly be looking at and talking about and ensuring that our vision becomes the reality.
Any other questions? Well, it's a good suggestion because having it on there doesn't make one difference one way or the other, because when it does come up, we are going to discuss it. But if you're saying it's hindsight that we may forget, then we'll just put it on. And as it comes up, we'll do like we did last time.
We could always invite Mr. Savageau every week to give us an update like we used to have.
I think he likes to be up there.
It would be like old times.
To keep it moving on. Any other questions? If not?
No questions.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So we'll keep it on the agenda.
Thank you.
Westfield project.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly agree with all those sentiments. I thank the board for its support, ongoing support of Westfield, and I'll make myself available as the board requests. The last issue is with respect, and I know there are several people. Walter, you're looking at your clock.
Yeah, I'm
I
setting
know
my timer. I'm setting my timer.
All right. I know there's several.
Because I know how you are, so I'm set.
Thank you. I know that.
That is a compliment.
I appreciate that, Walter. Mr. Chairman, I know there are several people here concerning the Lynn Road issue. I just wanted to briefly point out one thing that I think it's very important for the board to understand. My understanding is that when the board met twice concerning this issue, either the applicant at the time or the Mass Department of Mental Health made a statement during those meetings, either one of those meetings, that in fact the neighbors were not permitted or could not challenge that that application, or they would be, I guess, sued for discrimination. At least that's how it was described to me. I just want to point out to the board, and I know town council was not present in either of those meetings, and any competent council would have advised you, and I assume council will be advising you on this matter, but any competent council would have immediately informed the board that under Massachusetts law, there is such a statute called a SLAPP statute, which is Strategic Litigation Against Public Participation. Under that statute, any resident, any neighbor, any abutter, any association, anybody representing that has an interest, 30 seconds, it will have the right, and I'll finish up very quickly, will have the right to challenge without threat of litigation. If there is a litigation in retaliation, the costs of that litigation are borne by the loser of that challenge, of that litigation, which could be the
Mr. Savageau, we do have our attorney here.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There will be no applause, and if you keep it up, we will have you removed. Thank you. Excuse me? I think we have. Someone jumped in front of you. Sorry about that.
I've been here since 6:30. I was before Mr. Savageau. September, join me, please. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I am Carolyn McMorrow. I'm president of the Wareham Historical Society. This is September McCarthy, our board of director and the designer of our new website, warehamhistoricalsociety.org, and it's beautiful. And we have 2 events coming up. The 35th Annual Antiques Fair on July 4th, 8 to 2, rain or shine. We need help. We need participation. We're always looking for new people to get involved, so if that's your desire, come on down and get involved. We maintain 5 buildings, all on our membership, donations, and fundraisers, and this is our biggest, and I think our only fundraiser right now. So July 4th, 10 to 2, rain or shine. We also have coming up on the 26th, this coming Sunday, an open house at the Captain Kendrick Maritime Museum, and it is from 1 to 4. We have sent out invitations and we've sent out notices to all our members, but we'd like to extend a public invitation to all of the townspeople. The Captain Kendrick Maritime Museum is located at 100 Main Street, just after the Toby Hospital. Captain Kendrick was a very important character in his day. Scott Ridley, who just wrote a book about Captain Kendrick, Morning of Fire, he will be on hand signing his books. But the highlight of the day, I think, is we are featuring an exhibit of Wareham memorabilia, old Wareham memorabilia, downtown, some wonderful photographs, some old signage, just a great collection owned by George Dekas. And so this is, I think, the highlight of the open house, the George Dekas exhibit of the memorabilia, which is incredible. So we would like anyone and everyone to come on down.
One quick question, Carolyn. How are you tonight?
I'm fine.
Is this a free event on Sunday? Is it free? There's no admission
yes,
charge?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Donations are always accepted. 5 buildings.
Yes, I understand.
On one fundraiser. And fewer people all the time. Our membership is we always need new members. We always need new participation. So if history is your thing, please join us.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you on Sunday.
Okay, thank you very much. No, there will be no applause, please. I think the lady to the, okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For the record, my name is Renee Pickett. I'm a resident of Swiss Beach Road, and I wanted to also address the board concerning the construction and the building permit issued for 7 Lynn Road. I know that a lot of, and there we go, thank you. I know that a lot of people are here concerning that property tonight. I just wanted to discuss the building permit and the construction. The building permit was issued for the property, and it's in direct violation of the restrictive covenants held on the property, which are held by the Homeowners Association. The town had notice of these restrictive covenants. They're recorded with the land. They are also held in the town planning department with the subdivision file for this subdivision, Beaver Meadows. The planning board established the HOA as a requirement for approving this subdivision, and by allowing this construction to continue and issuing this permit, they're inhibiting the Homeowners Association from enforcing these covenants that they are required by this deed of restrictive covenants and the Homeowners Association trust to enforce. The Homeowners Association delivered a cease and desist letter to the town building department on May 20th, and I specifically spoke to the town administrator about that cease and desist, and he informed me that the matter had been referred to town council. But the Homeowners Association has not received any formal response from the town or town council regarding this cease and desist letter or this issue at all. No formal response from Town Council has been received to date. The residents of Beaver Meadows and Swiss Beach Road that abut the Beaver Meadows subdivision expected these restrictive covenants to be enforceable, and we expect the town to do everything possible to enforce these restrictive covenants, and we feel that this is not being done. So that's...
And did you state your name in the beginning? I didn't get it.
I did. Renee Pickett.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
1 second, please. That young lady, Renee Pickett, just mentioned town council who's sitting here. Is it possible for
Right. Is it?
town council to
we wanna
respond
hear
to
it-
that?
Do you want to
please?
hear it now, Council, or you want to hear the next person speak first? Okay, that's what I was going to do. We're going to wait. Okay, but I'm going to make an announcement. I know everybody's here for 7 Lynn Road. So we had one person. We'll have 2 more if you're the representative, and then we'll have our legal counsel come up and give you any information you need.
Like I said, I apologize for not having every page. The first 6 pages, I ran out of paper. Not gonna lie. When we were at the meeting last night with Fellowship, we had
Ma'am.
inquired about success rates for
Ma'am.
this program.
Can you just sit at the microphone so that the TV can pick up what you're saying? Thank you. No, you don't know.
When we were at this meeting last night, we had inquired about success rates for this program. Obviously, we have huge concerns. We've been told that there is a possibility that there will be sex offenders. These will be drug addicted, in recovery. They could be schizophrenic, bipolar. I don't have an issue with trying to help people. What I do have an issue with is safety. And if you look at these reports that I handed you, they're reports from the other houses that this organization services. There's 2 in Falmouth and 1 in Centerville. The police are there all the time. Suicides, overdose, disturbances. We don't want it. We don't want any part of it in our yard. They've broken covenants to do it. You know, they are asking us for respect, but then, you know, D.W. White comes in and renovates this house, and they don't show any respect to the people. And I'm not part of the homeowners association. I live in Wareham. I'm a concerned citizen, and I would never allow that to go on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, did we get the name for the record of the last? Thank you. Just want to make sure we...
Bill Whitehouse, Precinct 6. I got a memo this afternoon. You can't hear me. I got a memo this afternoon from the town indicating that there's a party up in North Andover this weekend that all department heads are required to attend. This is a going-away party for Mr. Stanley, Chief Stanley. And I was wondering if townspeople are also allowed. I mean, there's a party this weekend up in North Andover for Mr. Stanley. Apparently, town employees are getting half a day off to go up and attend, and I was wondering if other residents are welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm glad for that information because the first time I heard about town employees, I guess since I'm not a technically official employee, I don't get the day off then. But anyways, rumors are rumors. You can spread anything you want, but that's it. On Lynn Road, if there's one more, you want to come up. If not, I'll have the... Because what we're going to try to do is answer your questions and put you at ease. Is the green light on? Okay.
Yes.
Good. Thank
Board
you.
of Selectmen, Board Woman. My name is Sean Murphy. I'm 17 Lynn Road. Been a resident all my life. Went to the meeting last night. Mr. White showed up, who is the owner of 7 Lynn Road. We had a discussion with the fellowship. We had a discussion with the Board of Health. People from the town selectmen were present as well. The things that concern me and my neighbors is that Mr. White knew about the covenants at the time of his closing. Last night when I asked him directly if he received a letter of concern and also a letter to cease and desist the construction at said property, he said no. We were all present for that meeting. After the meeting, Mr. White came to me and told me he did receive those letters because we did send them certified. Okay. He also told me that at the time of his closing, he was aware of the covenants and the restrictions, but he also heard that if he went to the homeowners association and told us what he was going to do, that we would deny that. So his deceitfulness from the beginning is why we're here today. I'm not a very wealthy man. I'm in the military, been for 15 years. Okay, I don't practice democracy, I just preserve it. That's what I do. But I would not bring my family, my wife, and my 2 children in this town, keep them here in this town that I do love, build a beautiful house to raise my children in, knowing that that is the type of neighborhood I'd be living in. Now, if this was a house for muscular dystrophy, cerebral palsy, something of that nature, I could speak on behalf of our neighborhood that we would welcome them, but it's not. It's unpredictable people in an area that's filled with children. I have a 2.5-year-old son. I have a 5-year-old daughter. I'm not home all the time. I'm stationed in Washington, D.C. I'm home right now on a humanitarian assignment because my son was recently diagnosed with diabetes. I am very dissatisfied with the involvement of the town, the officials, and the people that are employed by this town. This is not something that was designed for our neighborhood in mind. And I could ask anybody here if they would have done the same exact thing, built a house knowing that that would be there. And the answer would be no. I fully expect the town, the officials, the employees to act upon this matter in a timely manner rather than what it's been proceeding now. If this does not happen, and I'm not making a threat, but I will make sure that all these people who are here tonight, on a drop of a dime, that we go to a town meeting with another 100 or 200 people and stir things up. This is our town. You are all here by the people. By the
17 children live in that neighborhood. Quiet. 17 children. Please, we're having respect here for everyone.
You're not. He's
Where?
not. He's smiling, sir.
Hey.
17 children in that neighborhood.
One more time, you'll have to dismiss yourself.
That's the easy thing.
Sir.
Right? Just sweep it under the rug.
Sir, you want to continue?
I would expect that this town would care enough about the members in this room and also the people in this town to look into this a lot deeper. It's not fair. It's not right. Like I said before, you're here by the people, for the people. That's what we do. And I expect action. No more talk and full 100% cooperation. Because some of the documents that we've requested and that we have received have been delayed or they cannot be found, and there's other things going on. It needs to stop, and it needs to stop tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to get the information, we did talk to a representative from the community, and they had meetings with another group previous. It was about 2 weeks ago, and then they've been having meetings with Department of Mental Health, Fellowship, and another organization. So we want to get all the information we can. Our lawyers have been on it. We're still waiting for information to come back. And with that, Mr. Rich Bowen, step forward. Rich Bowen is our town council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to say thank you for inviting me to the meeting. I want to say thank you for the residents. It's important for me to hear their comments and to understand the passions that are involved in this particular matter. I would like to say to the residents that the Board of Selectmen labors under a particular handicap in that it's very difficult for them to take public positions on matters that are still pending before particular board members. I understand, and I really do understand that there are particular things you want to hear coming out of the board members' mouths at this meeting. Unfortunately, for them to act in that fashion in advance of the decisions that would be taken would in the end be counterproductive to, I'll just say, to justice, and I'll leave it at that point. I can tell you that in the last week, I've spoken to each and every member of the Board of Selectmen and had their input. Last week, I met with the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen and the Town Administrator. I've spoken to Ms. Begley, Selectman Holmes, Selectman Schneider, and Selectman Winslow about the issues that you're raising. And we are looking at this very closely. I understand that, I really do, I understand that it's frustrating. I do happen to have one of these facilities in my own neighborhood, so I understand. Right now, my colleague Jay Tallerman, who has handled a number of congregate housing cases, is going through the information that's been provided by Mr. Burke. I know there were, one of the speakers had a package of information that was handed out. I'd respectfully ask, because information is always the key in these things, I'd respectfully ask that if any of you have information that you think is important to the legal review, I would be very grateful to receive anything that you have, and I'd respectfully ask that you provide it to me. With the Chairman's permission, I'm going to ask if that material could be funneled through the Selectman's office and sent on to me so that we've got absolutely everything we need to give you a proper legal review on this matter. Mr. Tallerman, I've spoken to him about this each day over the last several days as to how his review is coming. He just got a very large package of information from Mr. Burke that he is reviewing right now. You know, everything you can give us, it's that much more. We're working very hard on it, and the Board of Selectmen can't say this to you, but I can say it to you. The individual members of the Board of Selectmen, you know, they haven't met as a group because they can't do that. That's a violation of the open meeting law. But the individual members of the Board of Selectmen have been very adamant about a quick and thorough review. They can't say that. I can. Mr. Chairman, that's what I have to report at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Could we ask Town Council a question?
Yes, you may.
Rich, I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bowen, through you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Bowen, you said that, and I think as we spoke, Rich, that Jay was looking into this as of what, last Thursday or Wednesday, right? When he got the request through you.
Yes, that's correct.
And you got the request through the town administrator last week?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I ask council a question?
Yes.
One question, Mr. Bowen.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything to prevent a homeowners association from going through the process that we have in this town, for example, the Zoning Board of Appeals?
You know, I don't mean to be disrespectful towards the question in the least, but I'm afraid that if I give the wrong answer in a question like that, I don't want to send these folks down the wrong path.
I understand. That's why I was asking the question here, so that it could be addressed.
You know, for example, on the question of covenants, you know, there's some very interesting issues on the question of covenants. Questions about about the town's right to enforce covenants, or whether it's the homeowners association alone that has the right to enforce those covenants. I mean, frankly, until the review is finished, and again, I really, anything you got that you can give me, I can really use. I don't want to send anybody down the wrong path. We're looking at it really closely. These types, there's case law out there. There was a case in Framingham not that long ago that was a difficult one. There's this thing called the Dover Amendment, which regulates these things. I don't want to say too much because, again, when we have public meetings, what I say goes out, people take information, they adjust their strategies. I'm sorry if it seems evasive. There's a reason for it. Any help you can give in terms of information, it would be appreciated.
Mr. Chair? I was just going to ask that question, Mr. Chair, through you to Attorney Bowen. At the meetings that were held yesterday, there is a move-in date of July 1. And I think that the sense of urgency that we see tonight is that we're, 11 days away, 12 days away from that. So I have like a 2 or 3 part question. How long is this legal review going to take?
Well, we just got the package of information today, and so I can tell you it's not done today.
Okay, so let me revise my question. Is it going to be done before July 1st?
Well, it sounds like it ought to be.
Thank you. And what happens if it's not?
Well, when I say it sounds like it's...
Mr. Bowen, I'm going to interrupt. Right now, we have a building inspector. Until they get the occupancy, they can't do anything in that building. And we're searching our legal avenues of what it takes to either go through with it or not to go through with it. We're going to abide by the rules and regulations of the town of Wareham, not only for the town of Wareham, for the people out here, because these are our constituents. And we need to protect everybody, not only ourselves as the town, but the people that put us in office and that are here. We're looking out after everybody. But we have to abide by the rules and regulations, and until we get that information, I don't think there's going to be an occupancy permit going on. I can have Mr. Burke come up and elaborate on it. Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chairman, rather than having Mr. Burke come up at this point, Ms. Winslow points out something that's a very important fact for me to know.
And a big concern of the folks.
Yeah, well, I can well understand that.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that as soon as I'm done with the meeting tonight, I'm on the phone to my colleague, Jay Tallam, and say, Jay, get this sucker done now. I mean, 11 days or not, you need it now. And I understand.
Thank you, Attorney.
Thank you.
More paperwork. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Peterson, and I just want to state that I am, it's always dry in this room, coming before you as a citizen of Wareham and not in my official capacity as a state licensor who licenses and gives approval to occupy to such sites throughout the Commonwealth of Mass. But given that that's my job and my area of expertise, I am going to explain to you some of the issues with the permitting that has gone forth in this town thus far, and hopefully this will be helpful for town council as well. Okay? So I don't know much about this issue except for what I've read in the newspaper thus far. However, this particular agency, the Fellowship Resources, is licensed by the Department of Mental Health. It is not licensed by the Department of Mental Retardation, now known for the last 2 years as the Department of Developmental Services, in which I am employed with. So the Fellowship Health Resources is a contracted agency by the Department of Mental Health. Therefore, they must follow the regulations of 104 CMR, which is for the Department of Mental Health. And that's very important to know because it distinguishes very clearly between the occupancy use, between the mental health and the DDS population. Okay, so I gave you a copy. I'm sorry I don't have enough copies for everyone here, but I gave you a copy of the regulations so that you know that it does apply to the Department of Mental Health. Okay, licensing and operation standards for community programs. My issue so much more is around in addition to the safety of the residents, if this project does go forth, also the safety of the people living in this home. Because what I read was that this group would be exempt from local zoning and planning and different permitting within the town of Wareham, which is the furthest from the truth possible. Okay, so under the licensing, which is 104 CMR 28, location and physical plan, letter A, first and foremost, which is something that we always do when we cite programs. The program should be located in an area and amongst other buildings which are appropriate for the services we provided, and the general design of which does not emphasize the program's separateness or difference from the surrounding community in such a way to stigmatize or devalue the clients. This very project has not been set off on the right foot. This is not what the intent of these programs are. I have people that I know that live in the community fine and have done very well within the community and have no problem towards the community, but you have to follow the rules of that community. And those programs know that. The programs that we contract with, the agencies that are contracted with the Commonwealth know this, okay? Number C, buildings shall meet all applicable fire, health, building, and safety codes. Therefore, they are not exempt from any local ordinances. Okay, so I'm going to bring you over, because I don't want to take up all your time, to the next page, page 3. And I have asterisks this. Please be reminded that the owner and program must contact the local building inspector for further physical facility requirements to apply for occupancy. Number 3, this residence is greater than 4 people. And under the Commonwealth of Mass, once you become greater than 4 people, because my understanding is it's 6, it's a group dwelling. Therefore, it has to comply with 421 and 425 of the state building codes. Now, the only exemption on the state building codes for DMR, which is what I license, DDS, if you look under the regulations, is from those such building codes. And I'm going to read this to you verbatim. Programs that are operated or licensed by the Department of Mental Retardation, which is now DDS, pursuant to 115, 7, and 8, upon the completion of DMR safety assessments, are exempt from 421, and they're considered regular use, R1, R2, R3. Why we do that is because we don't want them subject to special occupancy codes, so they do not stick out in the neighborhood with the fire extinguishers and the wall mounts for the fire hoses and fire suppression systems. We want them to be individual homes within the community. Once you go over 5 people, they are no longer single residences. They're group facilities. It's a very different licensing code. So therefore, because they are not licensed by DDS, these are licensed by the Department of Mental Health, you have to default to 421-2, which says a group residence is a premise licensed or operated by any agency of the Commonwealth or a subdivision of that, and they're subject to 421. So those codes require a lot more safety requirements within those buildings. Now, this doesn't address the concerns of the residents themselves that are living there, but to issue the occupancy permit, that builder has to comply with all of 421 if the people are able to evacuate within 2.5 minutes on their own, or 425 if they need assistance to evacuate. If they have to go with 425, you have to do a lot more. You have to have a fire alarm system, you have to connect it to the fire department. So that quote that they're exempt from the building codes is only to say that they're exempt from having to do all these excessive fire suppression systems and lighting and all these excessive types of emergency systems when you're trying to make it a single residence. But the mere fact that they hit 6 or more people, they have precluded themselves from any exemption of any building codes in that nature. And in no way, in any shape or form, do we ever supersede the local ordinances or the town or housing covenants. That is actually in great disconnect from what we're trying to achieve when we try to place it within the community so they can be seen as valued, equal members of the community. So there's issues with, one, before you even look at issuing that occupancy permit, is if that home meets the safety requirements for a 6 or more person dwelling under 421 or 425. Now that entity is required to file an affidavit with the town building inspector to identify the intended use of that building, as well as the population, whether their ability to evacuate or not evacuate, which tells you what occupancy codes have to apply, whether they're 421 or 425. In regards to not wanting those types of services within that neighborhood, I cannot really speak to that, and I'm trying to only speak as a citizen, but because I've done this for 25 years, I know the rules. There's no exemptions from any local or town ordinances. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and that's very
Thank you.
informative, and I hope we've taken that
Jen
all
Peterson,
down.
right?
This is what we need. The more information we have, the more we can protect not only the town of Wareham, but I said as the citizens of Wareham. On that note, on Lynn Avenue, I'm going to conclude any more topic on that. Okay. You want to come up and state your name?
Lisa Simmons, resident of Wareham. The attorney stated that he just received the information regarding this today. My understanding of this whole process has been going on for, I guess at this point, a couple of months. Why is it that it took till today for the attorney to start working on this particular project?
Okay, as far as I know, 2 weeks ago was when I first heard about it, and they were going to have a meeting on a Thursday, and that was at the town hall with I think 3 players with the building inspector. I think he has the names of the people in that group. After that, now they had open meetings, and from then on we were getting information from the public and from the building department. So then we went strictly to the lawyer. We needed legal advice, and we are going to get legal advice, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. We can guarantee that. Yes. Could you speak to the mic?
Renee Pickett, I spoke before regarding 7 Lynn Road. The cease and desist letter was specifically delivered to the town on May 20th. And I personally had a conversation with the town administrator, and he told me on May 20th that the issue had been referred to town council. And I'm an attorney as well, an officer of a court. I would sign an affidavit to that effect. I'm very disappointed as a constituent of this town that the issue was not referred to town council after a cease and desist letter was delivered to the town building department. And I was told that it was.
Thank you very much. Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you for coming.
And something will be done. Yeah.
Just
As I'm sitting here right now, you heard it, and I'm talking to the town council. And as soon as the town administrator comes in, or we have an acting administrator while he's out, but it will be done, and you can count that. Yes, Mr. Snyder. Did you want to talk?
Yeah, I just have a...
Excuse me. I think I'm going to let him, and then we'll get right back.
I just have one quick question, Mr. Chairman, through you to council, and actually through you to Mr. Burke. Mr. Burke, when you issued the building permit, was the building permit posted 10 days as required by law at the town office? What is the normal process when a building permit is issued? How does the public find out about it?
Or request for a special permit and/or variance from zoning after review of building plans and what was asked of the client, we were given the information from the construction company that it was Department DMR, which DMH falls under different regulations, I know, but there are some variations. I provided that same section to the board, to town council. Today, as I can't be privy to the conversation that Attorney Bowen had with Attorney Tollerman, but in an effort to get more information to the board, to the public, I reached out to Mr. Tollerman myself, and he asked me to fax him some more information today. So I will be meeting with the town administrator to see what type of information he had provided to town council, as well as what he felt was questions that needed to be answered. With respect to the covenants, there are more questions that Mr. Tollerman is trying to look up with case law that may give them reason to have litigation with the owner of the property versus the town's involvement. That's my understanding. So right now, we are going to wait for town council before occupancy permits are issued. The previous speaker is correct, and we did note that they need to have multiple inspections and fire alarm, fire escape drills to make sure that they are capable of self-preservation, and they need to acquire licensure within 6 months of opening that particular facility from the Department of Mental Health. So we will continue to meet, as the chairman said. We have a couple of meetings scheduled for next Monday. We were doing this in an effort to get the best information to the public, to the residents, as well as get information from town council that could be very germane to any conversations that we have with those residents and with the owner himself. But I was happy to see the owner in attendance last night, and he needs to speak for some of the actions that he took as the proponent of the project, leasing to a licensed agency of the state. I think many of the residents heard that DMH was in the room. They were very articulate about the programs that they like to see. We don't get to pick the location. What we do is issue a building permit from the building department. We do all the appropriate follow-up inspections and review, as well as conduct fire drills with the fire department, after which time the building part of the process is over, before any occupancies are given and any licenses are issued by the Department of Mental Health. So this continues to be a project with some questions, and certainly with a lot of particular care for the residents in that area. We understand some of their frustration in the way the information has gotten to them, and I share in that frustration, as I had reached out to that particular organization on several occasions. I was very happy that they came forward and are starting to share actually what they do and who their client base is. There's certain questions as a building department that we aren't able to ask directly for discriminatory issues, and so that's kind of where we are with the building department right now. But I've continued to provide information through the town administrator, through to town council, and we'll continue to answer any of their questions, as well as the residents that have come to my office. And on the phone, I have had many conversations with them. I know they're frustrated, as they should be, but that's the process that we're in right now. We're just trying to make sure that under Chapter 40A, Section 3, for purposes of zoning determinations, that discrimination isn't happening, and also under the Mass General Law 780 CMR that governs group homes, that was articulated by the woman beforehand, that we make sure that we're being fair with the proposer of the project as well as the residents of Wareham, and protecting the town is paramount. So I'll continue to work with town council on this, and hopefully we'll get you answers as quickly as we get them.
I appreciate that, Mr. Burke, but just for a little more clarity, what my question is when you issue, when a building permit is issued by the building department.
Yes.
What is not the process of issuing the permit, but how does the public able to access that information? Is it posted somewhere? Is it posted on a website? Is there a time frame that it has to be posted in?
No, it's posted on the actual building, the permit.
Okay, but so there's no copy of it anywhere at Town Hall where it's posted or on a website, so that if people want to check a building permit, they can go online?
No, it is a matter of public information. If we receive a request, we try to honor that request to give people access to public information. There is a slight charge for copies and for staffing time. If it's simply a copy of the building permit itself or a copy of the building plans, that wouldn't be too difficult to come up with. But normally, I don't believe that it's posted anywhere in Town Hall, a listing of them.
Okay, so the only way the general public would be aware that a building permit was issued is if they were walking by a property and they saw the permit in the window.
Right. I mean, I think a lot of folks are familiar with being noticed in the newspaper as well as by cards to the abutters. That occurs when somebody's applying for a special permit or a variance to go for a site plan review or to go in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals where they're looking to build. That particular project meets all zoning setbacks. It meets the maximum lot coverage for the footprint of the building, and I was in agreement that they were in violation of a covenant which the town was not a party to. The covenant. They did, through the cluster development, ask them to form a homeowners association, but in Black's law that we quoted to them, it states clearly that if we're not a party to the covenant, municipalities are not able to enforce covenants. Sometimes they're not mutually exclusive, so we enforce them as part of local ordinances of building codes, such as too many cars that are unregistered on a property, things of that nature, which could also be in the covenants. But we don't specifically go out to try to enforce covenants of a neighborhood association.
I understand the issue of the covenants, and I would just like to say I know that the Wareham Courier used to publish building permits in the newspaper at one point. And if there's any media out there, you know, it might avoid a lot of these issues in the future if we could get the information to the media so that they could be published again. But I have a more direct question, a more important question, I think, and that is the question of the cease and desist order. Is the appropriate people to serve the cease and desist order the town, or is it the owner of the property? Mr. Bowen. I just want to make sure that all the bases are covered. Letter. Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, Mr. Bowen.
With your permission, Mr. Chairman. Ordinarily, I'm answering this in the abstract here, I understand. Ordinarily, with a covenant, you have two parties. The beneficiary of the covenant and then the party that is covenanting. And so the question of who gets to enforce the covenant comes down to a question of who is the beneficiary of the covenant. If you are not the beneficiary of a covenant, then ordinarily you would not have the right to enforce that covenant. And so the answer to your question is, your question was, to whom should a cease and desist order be directed? The answer is, it should be directed by the beneficiary of the covenant to the party that gave the covenant.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen.
Mr. Chair.
With your permission, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I say this hoping that you understand that it's my colleague, Mr. Tallerman, who's reviewing the covenants. But if the homeowners association is the beneficiary of the covenant, and if the covenants provide that, the person giving the covenant has to do A, B, and C, then the beneficiary, the homeowners association, is responsible for enforcing the covenant by taking the necessary legal action against the party that gave the covenant and is in breach.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. I don't want to put a halt to this all at one time, but I'm going to give you a directive. You have a representative from your organization. Have them come to the town hall in 2 days and keep checking with us to make sure that we stay on it. And right now, you have 2 days to get back with us with some kind of information that's going to be pertinent. So if you call him Mr. Talaman, he needs to be right on it right away, because this is like priority one.
I emailed him as I was sitting there telling him about the size of the crowd, the passion, the comments that were being expressed. I've asked him to make it priority one.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you coming, and we're going to do as much as we can to solve this. I had gotten the last one already, so thank you very much. And Thursday, have someone come by to get info. And Michelle, if you can give them that information that they were asking for, make sure he gets it right away, so there will be no excuses. Thank you. Oh, okay, yeah. You were the, sorry.
So my question is...
I think they chased you away.
Yes, I do remember the question. I just want to make sure that the occupancy permit will not be issued until legal counsel, they review it.
Right. In other words, we got to get all the information that we need to make sure we're covered from both ends.
All right, that was my question. Thank you.
Will the occupancy permit be issued before the legal notice?
We have to get, like I mentioned last night, we have to get all our information before we decide. And as far as I'm concerned, we're going to hold everything until it's not no, it's not yes, until we get all our legal information in. It won't be. In other words, it won't be issued until then. I hope that answers the question. No, I didn't say 2 days you're going to get an answer. But it may become July 1st, and if we don't have that information, what's going to happen? We don't have it, he can't get it. Right. Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate your patience.
I do. I was going to give him
Right now, I'm going to take a 2-minute break.
Mr.
And,
Chair, can we take a 5-minute while they 5 minutes?
Someone needs a 5-minute break, and we'll continue. Meeting will now resume. We have on citizen petitions patient, we have one more person to come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just take a brief minute of your time. Article 41 at the annual town meeting, in addition to asking for a rescission of a town bylaw, asked the town moderator to appoint a wind energy review committee, and I just wanted to let the board know that that has happened. I have appointed 2 citizens at large, as well as all of the required town agencies. Each board has forwarded me a name, and I've given everything to the office for them to notify them that it is formally established and that they should set a meeting and move forward.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate your promptness on that. Clerk, we continue on. Consent agenda.
Microphone.
Steve, put it on.
There we go, Mr. Chairman.
I can't hear
Thanks.
you.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't have any, no bills. Next on the agenda is the interviews for some of the various committees. The first interview is, did she come back up? Yes, she's for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We have Mrs. Brenda Ekstrom. Mrs. Ekstrom.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, could you ask the clerk to let us know how many openings or what the status is of the committee if he has that information?
I think once we get down to the point, I think it's all listed in there, but yeah, I think he will do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. You want me to do it, Mr. Chairman? Good evening, Mrs. Ekstrom. How are you?
Good evening.
Oh, that's wonderful. If you wouldn't mind giving us a brief explanation of your interest in the committee.
Okay. I'm Brenda Ekstrom. I was a selectman for 6 years. For 18 months, I was the selectman representative on the Affordable Housing Trust. In that time, we created the Affordable Housing Trust. We filled it. When I left as a selectman, we were fortunate enough to have Mr. Schneider become a selectman, and he was the citizen at large on the trust. And he has subsequently taken the position of the selectman representative. I'd like to continue it because we've had about just over a year. I think Mr. Schneider, when he was the citizen representative, I think he went on in April or May of last year. So we've had just a year of a full board. We've just gotten all of our rules and regulations in place. We have been looking at some different proactive things to do in the town to address affordable housing in a responsible way that is the least intrusive to the community. As we all know, that we have that 10% affordable status hanging over our heads, and I think that there's a lot of things that we're looking at as a board that we can do that would benefit the community, and I'd like to be a part of that, or continue to be a part of that.
And we have questions from the board.
Any questions from the
Start
board?
on either end.
I don't have I didn't ask the other applicant any questions, so.
Thank you.
Snyder? Mr. Bagley?
Yeah, I have a quick question. The 40B issue, as you understand it, have there been any projects that have come forward for the town that you feel that have been particularly good projects to move forward with? And what was it about them that you think were friendly or unfriendly to the town?
Well, I think the big one that we're all looking forward to is Westfield. I think that one's going to be a huge benefit to the community. I don't think it's going to be a drain. I think that looking at the initial pro formas from the previous ones, I think that that will be beneficial to all concerned. As far as many of the 40B projects, the ones, and that's the other thing, is that also I was the liaison to the Zoning Board of Appeals when Carlton Place went through, when 815 Main Street, 361 Main Street, the gatehouse there, those ones that I saw. The biggest problem that I have, and I think everyone has with 40B, is the inability, although our zoning board does a fantastic job, is trying to get everything they can, but it is the town's inability to say no to things in the local zoning. So as far as any of those ones that I see are beneficial, the only thing that I see that was really truly beneficial was that it helped attain or get closer to our numbers. You know, there were particular things in each one as far as reimbursing the town for certain things or putting funds in. For example, the Carlton one was the one I believe that they started putting in for every in-house or market rate unit that they did. They put money into the Affordable Housing Trust that enables the town to be able to come up with the proactive programs that I was talking about.
Thank you.
Mrs. Baker?
No questions other than to thank Mrs. Ekstrom for wanting to provide us with some consistency since this particular committee hasn't been in place very long. So thank you very much for coming forward.
Thank you.
What's the balance on that? Do you know?
284?
Off the top of your head?
I think it's just like 284. Is that?
Was the
about
money
right?
that,
Yeah.
285?
Right around there.
Was the money that we got back from
South Shore?
John Witten?
South Shore has
That was put right in.
37,000, I believe it was.
And there was one just before, it was for like 58 too, wasn't there? It was before that one.
That, yeah, it would have been before that, yep.
So we built that up pretty well over the last few
Yeah,
years.
and as if I may, that really is kudos to the Zoning Board of Appeals in general, and John Cronin in particular, when he was on the Zoning Board of Appeals. I believe, if I remember correctly, that was his brainchild, was to come up with some type of funding for the town so we could do these things.
Yeah, any other questions? Interview?
Is that it? Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right,
All
thank
set?
Thank
Thanks.
And next up we have Mrs. Jennifer Peterson, who's applying for a position on CETA. And Mrs. Peterson, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a summary of your interest in CETA.
Okay. I looked into the CEDAR because it has some projects that it's involved with that I have some experience in, particularly housing. I'm a certified public housing manager, and I have done 5 housing projects with HUD, particularly 811 PRACs, which are housing designated for people with disabilities, which is low income, which is different than affordable, because as we all know, affordable doesn't necessarily mean it meets the needs of the constituents for which you're trying to serve. But my understanding from attending a meeting of CEDAR and talking to representatives of that committee, that board has 2 roles. They do grants. They oversee some grants, which include some for housing, as well as some economic development within the town. My interest is in that, as I think I bring some skills from my experience and knowledge regarding housing and the rules for affordable housing, as well as the enforcement of the plans for housing. An area of economic development would be an area I would need to strengthen, and I feel that I do pretty well with research and how to connect with state agencies as well as other legislative bodies to learn what resources would be out there for our town so that we could seek additional grants or to procure additional funds to take care of initiatives we want to do for our community.
Thank you very much.
Any questions, Kara?
Mrs. Peterson, just one question. You brought up additional grants for the community. Are there specific areas of need that you see that we could, utilize more? I mean, you specifically mentioned housing for people with disabilities, and that's something that's near and dear to my heart because there's not enough housing stock for folks with disabilities, and we do need more.
Well, there's twofold. There's HUD projects, which are limited now due to the recession, but there are also ways to continue to work with other vendor agencies that can invest and do projects with the community. There is actually a corporation out of Connecticut who does phenomenal projects for people with disabilities, and it's on the same concept of HUD in that there's a 30-year lease, and at the end of the 30-year lease the provider or the town then owns the property. But you have the escrows for the set-aside, which is some of the problems that our older 689s and state housing authorities have faced, that they didn't follow the set-aside, so they don't have the monies to keep up with repairs or maintenance that they should be doing, which is what plagues our local housing authority as well. But there are a lot of grants for that entity which would not affect Cedar, but that were awarded last year for renovations and different entities. But I think that Cedar is that focal group to help with resource development even for other communities within the town.
Thank you.
Ms. Peterson, I certainly appreciate your background in housing. And I'm just curious, what are some of your other ideas for expanding economic development in the town of Wareham? Do you have any specific ideas that you'd like to kind of share with us?
Not really. Not for the economic development. I know that there was an idea brought forth by members of, I believe, the Finance Committee for the installation of automated parking meters within the onset area. And I know the businesses that I had spoke with some time back in January and February were very receptive to that idea because they would like to limit the time parking on the main street so that the access to their stores could be a greater turnover, and then we could do a greater amount of parking rates similar to Plymouth, as I believe the research that was done. Other than that, I really, like I said, I'd have to go and kind of look at other entities to kind of get some ideas for the economic development, and that would be an area that would not be my strength per se for that group, but something I'd be willing to research and partake and participate with that group as much as they would be willing for me to offer them.
Just one other quick question. I think that you've been attending meetings regularly?
For
CEDA,
since I think there's only been one or two since I submitted the application.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Baker.
Hi, Mrs. Peterson. Thank you so much for coming forward and volunteering your time. With the meetings that you did attend, were there any particular projects that caught your interest, or kind of looking at it from a standpoint of Wareham's master plan per se for economic development, and your thoughts on that?
The meetings I did attend were primarily focused on some of the housing initiatives around the grants and different areas of local landlords that were granted to have the low-income or moderate-income apartments, as well as the market rate, and trying to enforce them to keep them as within the 40B so that we can keep them within our numbers. That was primarily some of the topics at that time, and the consultant for the Community Economic Development Group, our consultant for the town, because that director position is empty, did speak to some of the initiatives that he has been working on with the town. But the group as a whole did identify that economic development is an area they would like to focus in the future and that the oversight of the grants were really where they had spent a lot of their time at this point.
Thank you.
Mr. Holmes? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next we have Ian Daly. Ian, are you here? Come on up, please. Ian, from Taunton. So you're not used to some of our meetings. Probably thought you were going home at 7:30, didn't you? Call the wife, tell her to keep dinner ready.
I did.
Ian is applying for an appointment as a constable. Would you give us just a brief summary of your interest and why you want to be a constable?
Okay. My name is Ian Daly. As you know, I live. My name is Ian Daly. As you know, I live in Taunton. I am an educator. I teach kindergarten through 6th grade, and I'm also a constable in Taunton and Dartmouth, and I'm a member of the Massachusetts Constable Association. I would like to become a constable also in Wareham.
My turn?
Question?
May I approach? May I approach? May I approach? May I approach?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
you may.
That helps by knocking his nameplate over, Ian. I said that helps by knocking his nameplate over.
And Wareham.
Ready?
Yes.
Mr. Daly, first, I have a soft spot in my heart for anybody that can hang around with someone my daughter's age all day long, times 24, 28. God love you for that. What is your interest in being a constable here in Wareham?
Okay, well, I do come to Wareham in the summertime, and I feel that I'm trying to expand the business, and this is a place that I bring my family, and I would like to be one here also.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes, can you just share with us a little bit about your experience being a constable? What are the types of things that you have done, served papers for? Just curious. And how long have you been a constable?
Well, I've been a constable since February in Taunton. I have not served any papers yet because I'm waiting for school to get out, but I've been attending education sessions at the Mass Constable Association. Every week I go there and, we get notes and we get, well, not lectured, but we get taught how to become, how to be a good constable. So I'm just waiting for school to come out so I can devote some time this summer to serving papers.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Begley? Mr. Holmes, yours.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we appoint Ian Daly to the position of constable for the town of Wareham to expire no later than June 30th, 2012.
Second.
Motion made and second. Done. Any more questions? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 5-0-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your summer vacation.
Yeah, yes, they'll notify me they have to come in.
Mr. Daly, once the paperwork is signed, you will need to come back and be sworn in by the clerk. Your best bet's probably to call the selectman's office, maybe tomorrow or the next
And they'll
day.
inform you, then it's downstairs at the clerk's office. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So Kathleen LaFlamme. Board Mary Kathleen is applying for a position on the Library Board of Trustees. If you wouldn't mind, Mrs. Laflamme, is that how you say
Yes,
that?
it
I
is.
did good.
Yep, very good.
Would you mind just giving the board a brief summary as to why you're interested in serving on the library
Sure.
trustees?
All right, libraries have really been important to me my whole life, and I lived here part-time for 31 years, and when I finally, in 2007, made Wareham my permanent home, I found that our library was losing its accreditation due to a little lack of money, and so I joined a concerned group that decided to raise money. It was Community Arts in Action, and we raised, by having shows, $1,500 to give to the library. At that time, I also signed up with others to be volunteers over at the library, and I am still and have been all along a volunteer with Marsha Hickey in the children's room. This is my real love because I was a grammar school teacher at West Yarmouth and in Taunton. And I also worked in the Taunton Public Library in high school and college, and I was lucky enough to have the children's room as my senior year, and the librarian there had to leave, and they asked me to take over, and it was quite an honor. It was really helping me with my my teaching job because I needed to have books for both. And while I was in college, being in the library, working helped me do research for my college projects. It worked all around, and my whole life when I was little, I loved reading, and I would walk to the branch library, and I found it a fascinating place because it was comforting, calm, accepting, and just thrilling to know that all that information was there for my taking and reading. And I would like to see that continue. The library really stands cuts with the state, Mark Pacheco said when he was here the last time, and it was important for all of us to volunteer as much as we could. And I just feel as though I certainly bring a lot of knowledge and a lot of education of libraries with me for this job, so I'd like you to consider.
Mrs. Winslow?
Thank you. I haven't asked any other questions of any other, so I want to be fair.
That's fine.
But I appreciate your grammar school experience.
Thank you. I forgot to mention that I was also the librarian at Parker Middle School, and that was the job. I had the library solely by myself, and it was my job to teach library skills to those people and those youngsters, as well as to really keep a love of reading there. I enjoyed reading them poems and stories from even magazines and other books, junior high. And so the children's room with Miss Hickey includes a lot of the books that I had with my children in the junior high at Parker Middle. So, you know, it's kind of like...
You can come over anytime.
Thank you.
Mr. Snyder?
It's pretty clear to me that you've dedicated most of your life to libraries and education, and
You really have.
I'm very impressed with what I'm reading here on your resume, and I think you'd be an asset
Thank you.
to the library. I thank you for stepping forward.
Well, thank you, and I do hope you will consider me. I forgot to mention, though, that I was also a co-owner and a manager of my furniture store in Taunton with my husband, and so I did all the buying and the selling and ordering the furniture and actually making up ads also. So I think I bring a business sense with me as well of really how to survive, and especially because we had a family of 4, so that I hope that that will help with if I do get a position on the the board. Okay, so it was nice talking with you all, and remember the name Mary Kathleen Laflamme. And thanks for Steve for getting it right.
Thank you. Mr. Begley?
Mrs. Laflamme, thank you so much for coming forward. You've got quite an impressive resume. Mr. Schneider stole some of my thunder here. This is decades of not only someone expressing a love for libraries, but you expressed it by helping libraries for some decades. So I really appreciate you coming forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Holmes?
I was guessing it was Bernie and Phil's. Which is when you said that you had a furniture store in Taunton, you did such a great job. I thought you were talking about Bernie and Phil's. It was
No, I
Rollins.
remember them coming in after we had closed, though, and we closed due to my health.
Right.
But it was called Roland's Furniture, and it was in Whittington.
Good. My aunt was from Taunton.
Oh, did she?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman Cruz.
Mr. Chairman, board members, next we have the Mr. Gay, Linwood Gay. I know, sorry. Linwood is applying for a position on the Marine Resources Commission. And Len, could you, would you mind taking just a couple minutes and summarizing for the board your interest in the Marine Resource Committee?
My name is Len Gay. I've lived in Onset since 1943. I grew up on Onset Harbor. I think I got my first rowboat when I was 8 or 9 years old. Been through most of the hurricanes. Fooled around on a dredge when I was, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years old. The guy that was operating the dredge was nice enough to let two of us young boys hang around and taught us a lot about dredging. And I'm an avid recreational shell fisherman. I have a mooring permit, or a harbor service permit, excuse me. I kayak all over Onset Harbor. And I got to say, I'm delighted to see that the water is getting cleaner because of the storm water remediation in the no discharge zone and the free pump outs. And I would really like to see a return of the bay scallop crop. There was a small crop 2 years ago. It took me 2 days to get a half a bushel. But I'd like to see that come back. I've been to one Marine Resources Commission meeting, I think it was 2 weeks ago. And Alan Slavin and Dave Begley sort of got me a little bit more interested in it than I had been before. I'd been slogged through their charter review committee for 2 years. I thought I might take a break, but I'll get back into it again. I'm also a call firefighter in Onset, which, in a roundabout way, if we have an oil spill, I'm probably going to be one of the guys that's deploying an oil boom anywhere in the town of Wareham, because we hold the oil spill trailer at our fire department. And I think I was at a drill last year, or I think over in Swifts Beach boat ramp, on deploying oil booms.
Any question, Mrs. Winslow?
Oh, Mr. Gay, I don't have any questions. I find that your experience is impressive, and I appreciate you coming before us to serve on this important committee.
I'm a little hard of hearing in my right ear.
It's my left, so.
I don't think it's your hearing. I think neither one of us up here speak too loud. So
No, it's my ear.
Yeah, we're going to have to work on it. Snyder?
I'd just like to say that I share your sentiment about seeing the return of the scallops. I remember as a kid here in Wareham.
Oh, yeah. That was a good source of employment for 4 or 6 weeks. Got a lot of people through the winter. When I was about 15, 16, 17 years old, it was not unusual to put 2 people in a boat with a 5-bushel limit per person, go out at sunrise or 7 o'clock and be back in at 11 with 10-bushel limit. That's one way I worked my way through high school, was opening scallops after school. I'd love to see that come back.
And I think someone with your history of the water here in Wareham would be absolutely invaluable. So I'd just like to say again to you, thank you for coming forward and volunteering.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Begley?
Hi, Mr. Gay. How are you?
I'm just fine, Mrs. Begley. How are you?
Very well.
How are you with your new job as selectman here?
So far, so good.
Oh, the dogs are lonely, aren't they?
Yeah, my dogs are lonely. You're kind of a fixture in Onset. Mr. Gay, and I've seen you out there getting oysters. You're out there.
Nobody's supposed to know where those oysters are except me.
My lips are sealed. Quahogs.
Quahogs, yes.
I've seen him and the missus out there kayaking on some days when no other kayakers are out there, but the two of them are out there. So I really appreciate that you want to get involved and preserve our waterways to the best of our ability.
Yep. Thank you.
Mr. Holmes? I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Gay.
Thank you.
Mr. Cronin won't be here.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman of the Board, John Cronin has applied for the member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. However, unfortunately, he's unavailable tonight to be interviewed by the Board of Selectmen. And Mr. Chair, I guess as we move forward now on this list, I would note two exceptions, and I don't have an answer as to why, but obviously, we've gone through a great deal of work to get these packets put together. Janet has done that. We missed an application for CETA that came in, and we have not had the opportunity to interview the person. They were not interviewed this evening. So as I go through the list, I will be looking to put CETA off and get the individual interviewed at our next meeting and make the appointment as soon as we can. It's only fair to the person that they didn't get interviewed, but they had their application in on time. And the second one was...
Mr. Chairman, if I may just ask a question. I did have someone mention to me also that they had submitted an application, and is that better? Can everybody hear me?
Get real close.
I did have someone mention to me that they submitted an application. I'm just wondering if it's the same person.
CETA?
CETA.
It was a gentleman.
Gentleman?
Yeah.
Mr. Savageau? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I told him I wouldn't advertise his name, but...
Okay. Well, I just wanted, I wanted to make sure that there weren't two Steve, that's all.
And the second one was, and this one I actually saw, so I'm not sure why. I didn't see the first one, but I did see this one was a gentleman applying for the scratch that, bike path committee. And so, with the board's indulgence, we don't have any other appointments to that committee. And I'd like to be able to just follow the same route, have the gentleman come in next week at our next meeting, and then we'll appoint. So we'll take those out of the schedule for the third Tuesdays, if you don't mind. And apologize for any mistakes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Winslow.
You want to know who it was?
No. No,
Actually, I thought he was already on that committee, so it was David...
Mr. Smith?
Yeah. I thought he was already on that committee.
No, we had discussed, we had asked him, or I had asked him, but we all thought about it would be a good idea for him just to make sure, because he's been on the Friends of the Bike Path, and he's an elected assessor. So he spoke to me outside earlier. He did speak to the Ethics Commission. There's no issues with his involvement in any of these things, so we should be good to go forward with him on our next...
When I saw it, I will say this, when I saw it, I thought it was a reappointment, because I remember him serving the spaghetti, dinner and stuff.
That's the Friends, right.
So we'll get to it immediately at our next meeting.
Mr. Chair, I just want to ask a question for clarification, just so I understand how we're doing this. When we have, well, first of all, we don't have any appointments to the Board of Health, and we do have vacancies on that, and we have conducted interviews. Is that something we're going to do on a future agenda?
Mr. Holmes?
The Board of Health, yes.
Okay. And just for clarification, we, before us, as we make these decisions, have every applicant that we may have interviewed 3 months ago and every person who wants to be reappointed. Okay. I just want to be sure that we're not...
Except in those cases where we know there was a deficiency, Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Holmes, you continue.
All right. We have first. Okay, I'm going to go by Janet's packet. So if you haven't fumbled your pages around, then we should be in good shape. The first one is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund reappointments. For reappointment, we have Sandy Slavin. You want to just take it as a group, Mr. Chairman? I'll read the group, and if anybody has a hold, we can pull it out.
I don't have a hold, but again, Mr. Chair, just so I understand, and perhaps I misunderstood months ago when we talked about this, I did think that we were going to have the opportunity to interview even the reappointments, which we didn't do this year, when we talked about our appointment policy. It's kind of hard, just, as a matter of practice, to reappoint people when we have people applying for those positions. And one of the topics of discussion that we had was that we tend to just reappoint because we're familiar with the folks that are on the board, and so
We did not require everyone to come in.
No, I know that, but it was something we discussed during our.
We discussed it. We may have discussed it. I don't recall if there was an outcome, Mrs. Winslow, but we didn't do it.
No, I know.
Mr. Chairman?
Are you saying that we should have done it? I missed something.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Holmes or Ms. Winslow, was the policy that you drafted officially voted on by the Board of Selectmen? Because I know that I haven't received a copy of it. I don't know if Selectman Begley has. So it's
workshop where we worked on guidelines.
Right. I remember a discussion taking place at a Board of Selectmen meeting, but my assumption was that it was a formal policy, but it had never been voted on or adopted by the board, and I'd like to.
I think we accepted it.
Yeah, that was prior to you coming on board, so.
Right.
To accept them as guidelines.
Accept them as guidelines. Okay.
I believe that's what the vote was at the workshop.
Is there any possibility that you would like to get on?
Oh, sure, yeah, I'll email you a copy. We just put them up. It's on the website, but I'll send the board a copy.
Mr. Chair, are these guidelines, to Mr. Holmes, are these just guidelines and they're recommendations by this board, so it's not policy? So if it's not policy to re-interview people that are seeking reappointments, then it's simply a guideline or a recommendation that this board didn't necessarily vote on to change the policy.
Right here, basically, there were just a few points, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The first was that we would, as soon as people got their applicant, we were trying to make more efficient the process. So we selected, I believe, the third Tuesday of the month, so that any applications that come through the door, we would interview. The Board of Selectmen would interview those people on that third Tuesday. Now, some of your every other week meetings have put the kibosh to that plan, and we've tried to do it at the following meeting. Now, because we interview doesn't mean that we appoint. We just interviewed those people so that, they would feel like they were being responded to. And we would get that piece done. Then we would then take that information. As soon as it comes in the door, we share it with the chairperson of the local board, and they were charged with or recommended that they would invite the person, and Janet does the same thing. She would say, Mrs. Begley, the next meeting of your request is on Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And we were hoping that the chairperson would send a nice little email saying, Mrs. Begley, our meeting is, right? And then you go there, and they would interview you as a board. Now, their interview is a courtesy interview. The Board of Selectmen appoints. We were very clear on that. But we did continue that practice of sending people to the local boards. And then basically, there was a 3-month request or guideline, and this is the one that usually gets people tripped up. You know, we had hoped that someone who had showed interest in the ABC committee would go to a few meetings. It's not a requirement that they attend 3 meetings. It was highly recommended by the board at that time that they attend 3 meetings. And pretty much that was it for the guidelines that we set forth under that workshop. And with very few exceptions, I think we've speeded up the process. And I think we've had a few mistakes along the way, but I think we've done much better than we used to. But to Mrs. Winslow's point, I don't recall that part about interviewing everybody for reappointment. I don't. It's not in my memory bank.
But it may, and Mr. Chair, through you, it may not have been something that we made a decision on that was quite some time ago, but I guess as I sit here and I look at all these names, and I appreciate everybody that comes forward to give of themselves and their time. When we have 5 slots open and 5 people who want to be reappointed and 5 people who are applying, it's just hard to make a real comparison when we've only talked to half of them. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I'm realizing now that this sort of, in a way, is a stumbling block for us as we go about, because we don't necessarily all know all these people, and so I'm just making a point.
It's a good point.
Thank you. I try to.
I appreciate what you're saying.
Mr. Holmes, you continue with this, and I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Okay. For the what? Who's leaving?
I think you're Mr. Chair now.
The Affordable Housing Trust Fund. For the reappointments, we have Sandy Slavin, Debbie Finster, Elizabeth Pizzoli. This board and Janet has put it on your sheets. She's listed the vacancies in addition to the 3 reappointments.
Mr. Holmes, I have a question about that. This is a 5-member board, and maybe
Mr. Schneider is a member
right,
of that board.
and maybe Mr. Schneider could answer this question for me. As a 5-member board, is this one of the few committees or boards that the selectman is a full member and a voting member? So that would be the 4th person on this group?
That's correct.
So there's really 1 vacancy?
Correct.
Because your name should be the 4th person, correct?
It should be
Well,
the
that's
first person.
That you
Yeah,
actually raise a
first person, of course.
Selectman Begley actually raised an interesting question because the committee has just finished drafting guidelines for the Affordable Housing Trust, and the Affordable Housing Trust is of the opinion that there are no openings on the Affordable Housing Trust, simply for the fact that although Mrs. Ekstrom was appointed as a member by the Board of Selectmen, she was never unappointed, nor did she resign from the position.
Well, she didn't have to resign. She's no longer a selectman. She was holding a selectman's position, which we refilled,
Designation.
if you recall, when we did our appointments. So you took her place on that panel, because she can't represent the Board of Selectmen. She was no longer a selectman.
Right.
So one could argue April 7th was the date, but in my mind, the day we appointed, actually it was April 7th, but in my mind, I just went along with the date that you were appointed.
Right. This is one of the unusual circumstances where, this particular trust is governed. It's specifically governed by Mass General Law with respect to it. I guess the issue, for me, it's an issue of clarity, and I think it's something that the Affordable Housing Trust will address, or has addressed, or will address in its policies going forward. Because there is a need for continuing on with a minimum of 5 members by mass statute. So, are we?
Did you say a minimum of 5 members?
Well, we're required to have 5.
Are you looking at increasing that number in membership?
Not without the input of the Affordable Housing Trust, no.
Well,
Not
Mr.
at this
Chair,
time.
can I interrupt? This was also an article at town meeting. This is, in conjunction with the Mass General Law that Mr. Schneider cites. So, might I suggest that we put this off? I know we have a special meeting next Tuesday. Maybe we can get some clarification on some of this before we, because there does seem to be some question about.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Schneider, I guess. What were your questions again? I didn't.
There's no question there was a statement that, that was the opinion of the committee. Simply put, was that, there was no change.
But there is a change. There was a change.
Right. Well, we can. Are we appointing at this point? Is we on that portion of the agenda?
Yes.
Because I will make a motion to appoint Sandy Slavin, Deborah Fenister, and Elizabeth Casoli to the Affordable Housing Trust.
Mr. Schneider, before we second that, there was a question. The only question I had about this was there was some discussion about beginning to stagger the terms. Because this was a newly appointed board, I think it was about 18 months ago, and everybody's term expires, with the exception of the selectman member, at the same time. Did you address that at all?
The committee did discuss that. We felt that it would be better to address it going forward because in order to keep some continuity with this committee where it's newly established and it has worked extensively to adopt policies and procedures, and it has been working extensively to put some very good programs together. So we would like to keep the continuity, at least during this term, going forward and not stagger the terms until the next time.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm confused.
Good, Mr.
Mrs. Thank you. Wow. First they tell me I look like Minnie Mouse, and now, how many people are supposed to be on this board? 5 or 6?
5.
5. And that includes the Board of Selectmen appointed person.
Member. He's a member, right.
So it's 4 at-large members.
So there's
There's
one.
one
Right.
'cause
4
there's
slots
one
a member of the board.
opening on
Correct.
the board. If we reappoint the 3 people that have been on board, then we have 1 vacancy, not 2.
That's correct. There are actually 4 vacancies on that board right at the moment. Well, as of June 30th.
With the reappoint. Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure that I.
So we have Mrs. Slavin, Finster, Pizzoli, Liz McDonald, and Brenda Ekstrom to fill 4 slots on that board. That's
But
the
if it
reality.
May I interject here? If it was brought up that they need to be staggered, this is the best time for us to do it. If we're going to go and reappoint these people, it's all on the 13th, can we do it as of today? You can do random. You got them in order? Let's go in order right.
Well, there is no requirement, Mr. Chairman, that they be staggered. And the committee...
I think most of our committees, they call to be staggered. The first year they're there and then they're staggered. So if there was a misinterpretation or whatever, because most of the committees that we have, they say the first year and then they get staggered one after another. So we have 3 people up here for reappointment. So if you go right down the line, the first person would either be 3 years or 1 year. You can go 1 because they've already been on board for how long?
2 years.
2 years. So we can go from there and just stagger these 3, and then the new people we have appointed will be for the 3-year period.
Mr. Chair, the town moderator's in the audience looking to be recognized. She may have some input into...
Okay.
If my memory serves me correctly, this was a board that was established by town meeting several years ago, And if I remember the article, there were several provisions to the article. I might suggest that you might want to go back and look at the original warrant article that laid out this committee and how it was laid out and what the provisions are. I know there were probably 10 or 12 different line items to the article, and it identified what the committee, how it would be set up, what guidelines it would follow and everything. So it might be worthwhile to go back and look at that warrant article, because this is not something that was enacted just recently. This was a committee that was established by town meeting several years ago.
2006. And Mr. Chair, that speaks to my point that if there's any question about, and I think Mr. Schneider raised a good point as to whether Mrs. Ekstrom is still or is still not a member. I mean, I think that if we look at that article, that may answer some of our questions. So all I'm asking is for us to put these appointments on the agenda that was just posted for the special meeting for next Tuesday, to give us an opportunity to review that article, make sure that we're doing things correctly. Because
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mrs. Winslow and Mrs. Smith, as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust Committee, I'm fully familiar with the article at town meeting, and I'm also familiar with the Mass General Law, which, you know, the article that was presented at town meeting is subordinate to the Mass General Law. And we, under the Mass General Law, you know, the committee has, there is clarity as to what the committee consists of and how it's appointed. The only issue is whether or not the terms are staggered at this point. And the issue was raised on a procedural matter, a policy matter, that there was no mechanism that, you know, basically either there was no mechanism that stated how a person from the Board of Selectmen is no longer a member of the committee. That's the only issue. And
it's a pretty simple answer.
Right.
So if you're not a selectman, you can't be the member from the Board of Selectmen if you're not a member of the Board of Selectmen, member of the Board.
You can't be the designated representative. Right. But if you're appointed by the Board of Selectmen to serve on the committee and you're no longer a selectman,
if you're appointed.
Right. Well, it should.
The difference between your appointment as a member of this board.
And I think, excuse me, but I think it's stated in the charter or the bylaws that if you are selectman, once you relinquish that, you relinquish your position on the board.
Right.
And
Well,
for clarification, we have attorney here.
Yes.
I'm glad you're still here. We'll have you check it instead of us arguing about it. Bring it back. We already put one committee off until the next meeting, so let's put this one off.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, you know, we're meeting twice a month.
Right, we are.
We're falling behind on the workload. You know, we're trying to make appointments here. These are people who have been serving on this committee and have done a very good job. The question was raised in relation to one particular member on whether or not she was still a member. She was here to be interviewed tonight. So whether or not, you know, my point is, you know, it's not an issue because she wants to participate on the committee and she has come forward as an applicant as well on the off chance that the Board of Selectmen did not agree with the committee's decision. I see no reason not to move forward with the appointments.
Excuse me, Mr. Holmes. I think this is more than just one person. It's more than just that, because we are also talking about the expiration date for all the reappointments. So for that, I'm saying that we hold this off until the next meeting. We already did it for CETA.
Mr. Chairman, you know, I appreciate what you're saying, but these items are going to continue to pile up, and I have a motion on the floor, and I would like to proceed and make the appointments. You know,
so your motion again was a blanketed motion for all three?
For all three.
Was there seconded?
I'll second the discussion.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Holmes?
Yeah, my only question is on the whole thing, and it's only because I prefer to see something like this happen, is I thought we'd go down the list, they were all appointed at the same time, and start to stagger the terms. That's my only, because if you end up in 2013, we don't know what's going to happen 2 years from now, Mr. Schneider. Those people decide not to deal with this anymore. They're fed up, and then next thing you know, we have an important board with no members, and then we have, except for the
No,
the
your point is
select board.
your point is well taken.
My question is not about the membership. I'm pretty sure she's not a member, but she's applied for membership to the committee. You can't be a member of a board as a selectman. My only question is, and it's not a question we can deal with it just by making the term and saying, the first person is appointed through 012, the second person is appointed to 013, and so on and so forth. And the staggering issue is taken care of.
Mr. Chair?
That's my only question, Mike.
Mrs. Baker.
You could have the entire board.
No, your point is well taken, Mr. Holmes, and I think that I was pretty clear that the question was only a question that the committee had. I wasn't arguing, for one way or the other whether or not Mrs. Ekstrom at this point is still a member of the committee. The board has clearly conveyed its sentiment, and as far as the staggering of the appointments, I think that issue has also been conveyed. My issue at this point is, these terms do expire June 30th, and, our workload keeps piling up because we're not meeting on a weekly basis, and I would like to move forward with the appointments. This is an important committee that I am a participant on that meets regularly.
Mrs. Bagley, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder if it would be possible if Mr. Chair would recognize a member of the audience just for a point of clarification and perhaps history on this particular committee. And
if you can be brief. 1 minute.
I promise I won't even say whether I think I am a member or not. I applied because it's a passion of mine. Moderator Smith was absolutely correct. It was in April of 2006. If anyone has their bylaws, it's in their bylaws. We don't have to go back to the article. It's part of the bylaws. And if my recollection serves me correct, it is one of the few in the charter it talks about staggered terms. This one just says that the members are appointed for 2 years. It doesn't say anything about staggering. I know I had brought this up when I was a selectman, and it kind of got shot down as far as staggering them. So that, just for clarification, so if any of you have your bylaws, you can look it up there. It's page 63, I think, right on there.
Is there any more questions on the motion? Any more questions? Mr. Bagley, any more questions?
Mr. Chair, at this time, my God.
Kara, can you wait, take a vote on this?
You had a motion?
No,
What was-
we need all. Okay, the motion by Mr. Snyder. Repeat it.
I move to appoint Sandy Slavin to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2012.
Second.
I move to appoint Deborah Finister to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for a term.
We have to vote on each one, don't we?
That's it. Well, he was going to do a blanket vote. I don't think.
Oh.
Okay.
We can do them one by one? Doesn't.
Yes, I think it would be better if we did
Okay.
one by one, but I think we need clarification.
I'm looking.
Because right now,
I'm looking.
right now, we're going for 2013. And there's
I'm
been a question
looking.
on it.
I'm
And
so looking.
you were talking about workload. Right now, this is what's causing the workload. When we have a backup like this that's holding up. We should have had it prior to this, like the last speaker said. It was brought up when they were on the board, and we haven't done anything with it. So we need to do it. And I'm going to repeat myself. We put Cedar off for another week. I think we put this off for another week, and then we go from there. Do I hear a motion to put it off, or? Well, he has a motion for all three, so.
I think, Mr. Chair, I think Selectman Schneider was in the middle of making his motion.
We get it. When is the next meeting? Do you have a meeting on the 28th?
We have a meeting on the 28th. It was scheduled for contract number 3, but we can always add this to it.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I found the bylaw.
What number is that?
It's on page 73. You are slacking. Term of office.
Excuse me, give me the pages.
The term of office is on page 74.
74.
Would you like someone to read the provision, Mr. Chairman?
If you do, and the same thing as what I need to do, what we need to do is check the standard for committees to make sure that committees aren't staggered. Because if there is a provision that calls for all committees to be staggered, then it would apply. This is a committee.
He was about to deal with that in his motion. If we had let him finish, he would have staggered the committee and done the reappointments all at the same time.
Mr. Chairman, with regard to the term of office, the trustees shall be appointed for a 2-year term commencing on July 1st and ending on June 30th, or until such time as a successor is appointed, should said appointment be delayed. Now I will continue with my motion. I move to appoint Sandy Slavin to a term to the Affordable Housing Trust for a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2012.
No, 13.
If we do this one at a time, it'll be...
13.
No. She's out.
We're staggering.
Would you please instruct the audience to let Mr. Shiner make his motion?
I move to appoint Deborah Finister to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2013. And I move to appoint Elizabeth Pizzoli to a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2012.
Second.
Is there any more discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The bylaw clearly says that the term will be 2 years. So by staggering them and appointing people for 1 year, I think is a violation of the bylaw.
You have to read the whole statement. Read the whole statement. It's 2 years or...
Mr. Chairman, through you, could we ask Mr. Bowen to...
Mr. Chair.
I think he has it right now, and the other thing he needs...
Well, while Mr. Bowen looks at that, can we move on to some of the other... There are still people in the audience waiting.
He's ready.
With your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'll just read it again. This is on page 74, Division 7, Article 3, Section 4, Term of Office. The trustee shall be appointed for a 2-year term commencing on July 1st and ending on June 30th, or until such time as a successor is appointed should said appointment be delayed. My interpretation of that is that the term of office under the terms of the bylaw is 2 years. The language that says, or until such time as a successor is appointed should said appointment be delayed, means that if, for example, the board at some point were unable to make appointments to this board until after July 1st, the person who had a 2-year term, their term would continue to, there would be holdover occupants of the seat until such time as the board actually appointed their replacement. That's a fairly standard provision when it comes to committees. Typically, members, except for elected ones, appointed committees, the members hold over until their successors are in office. That way the committee continues to function until the replacements are in there. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Bowen, if you would. Through you, Mr. Chairman, if the board delayed it, I mean, what we're trying to do is create continuity on this board. And if in 2013 these people decide they're sick of it, as we've already discussed, we have no board except for the member.
With your permission, Mr. Chairman, you have to change in order to. I understand the concept of staggering, and I certainly understand the desirability of doing that for continuity purposes. but to effectuate staggering, you would have to change the bylaw to provide for it. And that's really the only obstacle to being able to stagger at this point.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Bowen. Mr. Bowen, the paragraph states that the trustees shall be appointed for a two-year term, for a two-year term commencing on July 1st and ending on June 30th. Is it possible to stagger the term if we meet the minimum two-year requirement and appoint some of the members for three-year terms?
You know, where the bylaw is so specific about 2 years, I'd be very reluctant to follow that, because it says 2 years unless you have a holdover. Yeah, I think if you wanted to do staggering, the best thing to do is change the bylaw, you know, and perhaps if you got a bylaw in place, you know, say in the fall we adopted a bylaw, by the time the AG looked at it, you might have an effective changed bylaw, say, by January 1st. I mean, certainly if current members wanted to resign their positions and you wanted to kick in staggering, then you could do that. But if they wanted to go the full 2 years, they're in there for the full 2 years.
So what you are recommending now is go as is?
I guess the bylaw says 2 years, and I think that's all you can do.
Mr. Chairman, I withdraw my previous motion, and I
Just to withdraw a second.
You withdraw your second or not?
I don't want to.
Okay, no.
I like Mr. Schneider's motion the way it was, and we can take a vote on that, I guess, because I really think that's important. As does the board, right? The local board felt it's important as well. So we'll have to send some language, I guess, to town meeting in the fall to do that. But yeah, I'll withdraw my second. I don't want to.
So you're withdrawing your motion, Mr. Holmes?
His second.
Yeah. Your second? All right. So I'm going to move to appoint Sandy Slavin, Deborah Fenister, and Elizabeth Pasoli to the Affordable Housing Trust for a term not to exceed June 30th, 2013.
Second.
Is there any more discussions? All in favor?
To expire. That's okay. Go ahead.
I think he already said to expire.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Holmes?
I missed that, but did we do something wrong?
No.
To expire? Term to expire?
Mm-hmm.
It's all 213.
So we got
There's a
500.
motion on the phone and a vote was called for.
500, is that correct? Anybody opposed?
I'm abstaining.
Abstain. 401?
No, I'm abstaining.
You're abstaining?
You're abstaining?
Yeah, you got three, right?
302? Aye. No. Abstain. 2. All right. Mr. Schneider is the board member. And then we have two people who have applied. We have Liz McDonald and Brenda Ekstrom. Both have been interviewed by the Board of Selectmen. Mrs. Ekstrom was interviewed by the local board. Mrs. McDonald was not. I think there were some email exchanges back and forth in regards to that.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Brenda Ekstrom to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2013.
Second.
Motion made in second. Any discussion?
I think I'd just like to make a couple of comments for the very same reasons we talked about earlier. I think that the institutional memory that's needed on this board, Mrs. Ekstrom has clearly demonstrated her institutional memory and her knowledge of affordable housing in the town of Wareham, and she has also been a regular attendee of the meetings. She's thoroughly familiar with what has gone on. She's the recommendation of the committee, and I think that for continuity and institutional memory, I think that she would make a fine addition or fine continuance of the, as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust.
Any other questions? There's a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm abstaining.
Abstain again?
Yes. I just think there's too many issues with this to deal with it tonight, and I don't feel comfortable.
I'm sorry, Carrie.
I know. Don't worry about it. I'm abstaining.
Now, okay. I'm abstaining.
You're abstaining as well?
Yes. The board votes. If there's a tie, I vote to break the tie.
So what's the vote?
So I vote aye.
302?
302.
And what was, how many vacancies? There was only one vacancy?
That's it. All right, next up is the Community and Economic Development. I will put that off, as I requested earlier of the board. The next group is the
Clean Water Committee.
Clean Water. I got it. I just want to make sure I'm checking off my list at the same time. The Clean Water Committee, the board interviewed on 6/7, if you all recall, Mr. Leggett. The board decides to appoint Mr. Leggett. His term would expire no later than June 30th, 2014. Now, here we go again, the same, I forget the number on this, but all these folks would expire at the same time.
I can't hear you, Mr. Holmes. There's the air conditioner.
We have the Clean Water Committee reappointments. We have Mr. Pasevich, and we have Ms. DeGrania. We also have vacancies on this board, and Mr. Leggett interviewed before us on June 7th.
Correct.
I'd make a motion to reappoint Ed Pasevich and Roseanne DeGrania to a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2014.
Second.
Motion made and second.
All right, who was the second?
I second.
Thanks, Kara.
Any questions? Discussion? If there isn't any, take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous?
Any abstains?
No.
500. I'm sorry? 500. I'd also make a motion to appoint Joe Leggett to a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2014.
Second.
Motion made and second. Kara? Steve? Any questions? Questions? Motion before you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain, Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
500.
Clean Water Committee.
Thank you.
302.
302?
Yeah.
Committee on Disability reappointments are Jimmy Newman to a term to expire no later than 2014.
Second.
That was quick. Steve? Made a motion. Kara? Any questions? If not, motion before the board. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous?
Mr. Chair, motion to go beyond the hour of 10.
Was there any abstentions on that one? It was 500, Mr. Chair.
If there isn't any vote taken, a non-vote taken is considered.
Yeah, no, it was just verifying for the record. And I would also make
Second.
a motion to,
I'm seconding Kara's motion to go beyond the hour of 10, Mr. Chair.
Motion made to go beyond 10.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
to appoint Patricia
Panzarino.
Panzarino.
to a term to expire no later than June 30th. She was interviewed by the board as well on June 7th.
Second.
Motion made, Steve. Kara, second. No questions? Motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous?
500. A community preservation committee. We have two individuals for reappointment: Nancy Miller and Sherby Worthing. I make a motion to reappoint both ladies to a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2014.
Second.
For
Motion
discussion?
made, Steve, second.
For discussion, there were no other applicants, am I correct? This is not to cast aspersions on anyone. I'm just making it...
If there were other applicants, they would be.
Exactly. So we have a few committees that there were no additional applicants, and then some committees that there were multiple, correct?
Correct.
But not this one. Thank you.
So this is just reappointments, Mr. Holmes, correct?
That's correct.
Motion made and second. No discussion? If not, vote be taken. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous?
On the community events committee, we have two folks that are up for reappointment. And we have one person who the board interviewed on June 7th. There are no vacancies on this board at this time. So there are three people who have applied. Two are existing, looking to be reappointed, and one person is looking to get on the board.
But you said there aren't any vacancies.
There are no vacancies, but we had one person apply, and you interviewed them on June 7th.
Well, Mr. Chair, to clarify, there are two openings, and the two individuals that currently hold those seats have applied for reappointment.
Correct.
But we also had Mr. Monahan come in and apply and express an interest in this committee.
That's correct.
Mr. Chair, my question is this. We're going to have these situations. We have other committees that people want to be reappointed, so there won't be any vacancies. Is there anything to prevent a citizen from going and actually participating? They certainly may not have a vote, but they may have a voice if recognized by the chair by these committees and be able to have valuable input. There's certainly nothing to prevent someone from being an active participant. They may not have a vote.
They're public meetings.
So that would be true for any of these committees. And should there be a vacancy as a result of a resignation, we certainly could notify a person that this board has already interviewed. Is that correct?
That's correct. And not only that,
Mr.
once
Chair.
we're through with this process tonight, we will be updating all these lists, right? And so let's say that if someone applied, the board is full and they didn't get appointed, we're going to be sending them a letter or an email saying, hey, Steve, thanks for your interest. However, you weren't appointed for that committee. We do have openings on these 6 committees. Maybe you'd be interested in serving. So.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. There are no limitations. If they want to go, all these meetings are open meetings, so they can attend.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
but I think that what we're talking about here is one of the issues that we talked about during that workshop, and that is that whenever we have an issue of people applying for reappointment, we have a full committee and we have other members of the community that may want to step up to the plate. It's very difficult for us to sit here having only spoke with Mr. Monahan and not had a conversation with the other two that are up to really make an apples to apples comparison. I don't have an issue with any of the people that are on the committee, but all that I'm saying is for us to just reappoint people by virtue of reappointing them seems to be unfair to those that are expressing interest. For us to not reappoint people and not talk to them because we've just recently interviewed someone seems really unfair to the folks that are dedicating their time.
Well, for this one particular committee, I've been not a liaison, but actual member. And these two people have been doing a great job.
I'm not.
Community events does a good job. And Mr. Monahan, when we interviewed him, knew that there wasn't any openings, and he was satisfied to be interviewed and to be put on the list, as Mr. Holmes has said earlier. If there's a vacancy, then he'll be on. He'll be up front.
I'm not suggesting that the folks that are on the committee aren't doing a good job or that Mr. Monahan himself didn't understand the situation. But this was one of the reasons, and you yourself, Mr. Chair, at the time had brought this issue up. So I'd like for us to, because this is now the second or third committee that this has happened to, sometime in the near future, I think we should have a conversation about how to do this in the most fair and equitable way possible, because we don't want to discourage volunteers by just constantly reappointing the same people to boards, but at the same time we don't want to punish volunteers by unappointing them to appoint new people.
Right. Then the only other way to get away from it, instead of doing a blanket reappointment, go through each one and we'll get it through. If you want them in, you want them in. If you don't, they're out.
Mr. Chair,
Do we have a motion?
just one thing, and I know in the essence of time I'll be brief. I understand Selectman Winslow's concern, but I think that until that's a policy, that it's not anything that we can uphold. We can recommend, we can have guidelines, we can strongly recommend different things, but unfortunately, if we don't have a policy to support interviewing for reappointments, or we can certainly ask for recommendations from the chair of the committees about the reappointments, unless, of course, it's the chair that's going to be reappointed. But until we have a policy that supports that, I'm not sure it's anything we can enforce.
And all I'm asking for, Mr. Chair, is that at some point in the future, and I know that we're only meeting every other week, and I know there's a lot of work, but at some point in the future, I'd like us to sit down and revisit the issue of what's really amounting to automatic reappointments. Not because I have an issue with anybody that's been reappointed, but because I think we need to take a closer look at how this is and perhaps craft a policy so that,
I think that's a good idea, and when we get done with this, if you would want to take it upon yourself to draft up something and present it to the board, you're welcome to it.
I will do that.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes. Want to do it individually so we can satisfy?
I was going to comment. I thought we were doing that individually. I guess we can do it. Well, I'd make a motion that I know both of these ladies are doing a wonderful job. I'd make a motion
Mr. Holmes, I can't hear you.
I would make a motion to personally appoint Laurie Benson to a term to expire no later than 2014.
Yeah, that sounds better. You were right up to the mic. You're right up to the mic.
I'm sorry.
I have to do the same thing.
That's what, we're right. We're on community events, committee reappointments.
Motion made. Second, Ellen. Any questions? No questions. Vote presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous?
And I would make a motion to appoint Linda Gay as well to a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2014.
Second.
Motion made, seconded by Mr. Snyder. No questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous?
Mr. Chairman, we have several constable reappointments. all expiring on the same date. I would make a motion to the board appoint Richard Coletti, Charlie Devlin, Michael D'Aso, Cynthia Follis, Gregory Kamen, William McCusker, Robert E. Short, Robert A. Terrell, Herv W. Vandal Jr., Joel C. Thomas, George Moss, and Thomas Zine to a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2012.
Second.
Second by Kara. Mr. Winslow. No questions, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 5-0, unanimous, 5-0-0.
Next up, we have two appointments to the Historic Commission with no additional request. I would make a motion to reappoint Nancy Miller and Carol McMorrow to a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2014.
Motion made. Second.
Second.
by
It's McMorrow.
No questions? What's the board, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, 5-0-0.
For the Library Board of Trustees, we have...
Mr. Chair, can I just interrupt? I had received a letter, and unfortunately, due to some type of computer issue, it got lost on my email. In other words, it didn't show back up that I meant to forward to the rest of the board to read on these from the current chair of the Library Board of Trustees. So could we put this one off till Tuesday, because that was my fault.
Okay.
I just think you should all have an opportunity to read the opinions of the...
And that was Library Board of Trustees?
Yes, thank you. And I apologize for that. I'm not quite sure how that happened.
Okay, we have next up we have the Marine Resources Committee. Pull it up. On the Marine Resource Committee, we had Mr. Limigate tonight for reappointment. Now, there is an opening on that board. Mr. Barry is not seeking reappointment. The committee, we also have associate members on that group. So the committee is asking that David Begley be moved up to full member, and Mr. Gay, who we interviewed this evening, be appointed as an associate member on the Marine Resources Committee. We also have reappointments of Alan Slavin, Mr. Wheeler as an associate member, and Mr. Begley is an associate member. So I would make a motion at this time. I pull this together.
I have one question, since I don't have an application from Mr. Begley, and since he's here, is he willing to step up to that position? You can answer from there if you want to, instead of... I didn't want to wake you up, but go ahead. You and me both, so... Right. So all I need to know is if you're willing to take... You want to move you up.
On my, when I re-upped for the first part, I also added into it that I was interested in becoming a full member.
Right. But we just want to make sure, because... Right.
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Begley, Is there someone else who's currently a full member who's moving back to an associate member?
No, Mr. Barry is resigned from the.
Oh, okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah. So my moving up would open up another
associate.
An associate
Okay.
position.
Thank you.
Mr. Holmes, motion.
Huh?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Wake
I
up,
would
Mr. Holmes.
suggest, if with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest you refrain from doing that again if there's anybody else in the audience. We had 2 citizens I told we couldn't do that to tonight, who are probably watching right now saying, why did you just do that? So if you could just refrain. I would make a motion first to appoint Alan Slavin for reappointment to the Marine Resources Commission for a term to expire no later than June 30th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions? No questions? Motion on the
the
floor.
AC.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 500.
I make a motion that we appoint David Begley to a full member on the Marine Resource Commission to a term to expire no later than June 30th.
Second.
Motion seconded by Kara.
Didn't we just do
Questions,
Mr.
all?
Begley?
Any questions?
No.
No questions? Motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous? 500.
I abstain.
Mrs.
Chairman.
Begley abstained.
4-0.
Who did we appoint first?
Alan Slavin.
Alan, okay.
To reappointment. And then I would make a motion, Mr. Chair, to appoint Linwood Gay as an associate member of the Marine Resources Commission to expire no later than June 30th, 2014.
Second.
Motion made, seconded by Mr. Snyder. There are no questions? Motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 500.
Did you miss Mr. Wheeler?
What was that?
Did we miss Mr. Wheeler?
Yes.
Mr. Holmes,
Wheeler.
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Holmes. Did we miss Mr. Wheeler?
Oh, my God. Yes. I had thought he was on the list of associate members. And, of course, to reappoint Dick Wheeler to a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2014.
As an associate member?
As an associate member, and my apologies.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. No questions? Motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 500.
Sorry, Dick. I should put these back on. Old Colony. On the Old Colony Elderly Services Commission, there's only one person, and this is for, I make a motion to appoint Martha Strahan to a term to expire no later than August 30th, 2012.
Second.
Motion made, seconded by Mrs. Winslow. Any questions? No question. Motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous?
Make a motion to reappoint Donald Hall to a term to expire. This is for the Open Space Committee to a term to expire no later than June 30th.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. No question.
The year 2014?
Correct.
Any other questions on the floor? No other question. Motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous?
Make a motion to reappoint John Dixon to the Recycling Committee for a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2014.
Second.
Motion on the floor. Second by Mrs. Bagley. Questions? Motion on the floor. Vote taken. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous?
Same dates. I would make a motion to reappoint Sylvia Armerson, Audrey Cotter, and Jackson Gilman to a term to expire no later than June 30th, 2014 to the Wareham Cultural Council.
Second.
Motion made, second by Mrs. Winslow. No questions? Motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous?
Mr. Chair, did we get the Conservation Committee?
Who? Where?
Conservation? This is Mr.
Conservation Commission.
Commission.
Let me go back.
Oh, this paper. Oh, here it is.
Oh, see, I was going by the agenda, so.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I pull it out of this packet as well. Okay, the Conservation Commission. 3 associate positions exist. The board interviewed on 6/7 Peter Williamson. Nothing has been received back from the committee in terms of recommendations. So,
Should we put that one off till
No.
next week?
they haven't. One of the issues was they had a month to.
Mr. Chair, I have a question about the associate position. After the interview that this board had with Peter Williamson, I had neglected to ask him a question, so I emailed him a question and have not received an answer as of yet. I used the email address that he had provided. I neglected to ask him, since he's in the construction industry, if he did business with the town. And because I think he had applied as an associate, for an associate position for conservation and for the zoning board of appeals. So I would like to put this off until we get more information.
I would support that.
Good with me.
That was the Conservation Commission.
Right.
No, the
and
culture.
you're gonna just let us know, or you want to shoot me an email when he
Certainly.
responds, and then
Certainly.
I can get him right back on the. We did the same thing with the guy on 28 there. I forget his name. He was an engineer, and in the end, he ended up not deciding to do it. Okay, not a problem.
But the Conservation Commission reappointments, we can vote on this
we
evening?
can just do them all next week. That'd be okay. That way we do them all at the same time and
Okay, that's the
it'll make life
Conservation
easier.
Commission,
Hang on a second.
correct, Mr. Holmes?
All right. That was conservation. We'll take that up next Tuesday. Conservation Historic District. Hang on. That one's done. Hey.
Mr. Chair,
Done,
just while
done.
Mr. Holmes is looking for that,
Oh,
just
here we
as a
go.
practical matter, the Mr. Leggett's file did not
he's
come
done.
over in the town administrator's
Open
folder, so
space.
we'll have to sign his paperwork
Recycling done.
next week or when we stop in the office.
Culture done.
With all these
Uh,
files,
zoning
it's a
board of-
wonder it's only one.
Are you talking? I'm sorry.
I'm just going to keep talking, Steve, until this
Okay.
ends.
Till the cows come home. That works for me. With all due respect, and as a matter of respect, I think that Mr. Cronin, who was unavailable, maybe with the board's indulgence.
Just giving you mine, so all you have to do is sign it. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect to Mr. Cronin, with the board's indulgence, I'd like the opportunity to be able to ask John to come back next week and be interviewed by the board. He hasn't been interviewed. And we can put the zoning off for a week. Now, if you can't make it next Tuesday, John, that's it.
For clarification, Mr. Chair, if we're going to put off on the zoning, if that's, could I have a list of the ones that we've put off? Because I think I've lost track a little bit.
Cedar?
You're only putting off that one, Mr. Cronin, but we still have a
No.
reappointment for the zoning.
I have Cedar for next Tuesday.
Concom.
Interview and appointments. We have the bike path, a gentleman to be interviewed next Tuesday.
Board of Health.
The library, Mrs. Winslow is going to forward us the recommendations.
Yes, tonight.
And zoning.
Board of Health, you have
Board
on
of
that
Health.
as well?
Board
Mr.
of
Holmes?
Health.
Mhm.
The Board of Health, at this point, has no reappointments.
No, but they have 2 associate openings and have had
Understood.
multiple applicants.
That have
We
been on
have
file for-
actually interviewed several.
We've interviewed, I think, everybody.
Yeah, everybody's been interviewed, and my understanding was I spoke to the Board of Health agent on Friday, and they were forwarding a recommendation to the board. I haven't got it yet. I will follow up on that one as well, because we asked them to give us a recommendation.
I was at a Board of Health meeting. I don't believe that we've seen all of the applicants come forward to the Board of Selectmen.
Well, we forwarded those. It's been quite a while now.
Okay. And
There's
I think
like
it was
5.
even before. Some of them were before April that we interviewed.
I'd like to just I'd like to double check.
Yeah,
to make
and
sure.
let's just have Janet go over for the Board of Health and have them ready for the next.
In the conservation.
Correct. So there's CETA, Conservation Commission, Bike Path, ZBA, Board of Health, and Library.
Right, well, we're going
So how many you have? Just to make sure.
6. I have CETA for an interview and appointment. I have Conservation Commission, Bike Path, the Zoning Board of Appeals, Board of Health, and Library.
Just to make sure if between the one that Steve's given in, Janet here's on the recording.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
Now, you do have a reappointment. Now, you're putting the zoning board off. You do have a reappointment for the zoning board. Do you want to do that? Get that out?
We just do it all at the same time on Tuesday.
Okay, we just want to make sure that.
That's what we did with the others, so there's no
Yeah,
confusion.
because he is the chairman.
Next, Mr. Chairman, you have the minutes from October 19th, 2010. That's it for the others. Now, is there anybody I missed who was here for an appointment, just to make sure? Oh, he's all set.
He's all.
Yeah. No,
Right,
they're
yeah.
all set. Yeah. Anybody else? Thanks. Anybody else who expected to be appointed and wasn't? Showed up for an interview and wasn't? Thank you. Well, we did okay. On the minutes, October 19th, Steve Holmes. I make a motion that we approve the minutes of the October 19th. I make a motion we approve the minutes of the meeting from October 19th of the Board of Selectmen Sewer Commissioners.
Made and second by Kara.
Oh.
Made by Steve, second by Kara.
Mm-hmm.
Down any discussion, looking vote, it'll be the three of us voting. Abstaining will be Mr. Bagley and Mr. Snyder. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3, 0, 2.
I understand abstinence there. The next group is the January 25th meeting. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the minutes of January 25th of the minutes of the Board of Selectmen Sewer Commissioners meeting.
Motion made. Second. Kara? No questions on the floor? Motion taken. All in favor?
Aye.
302.
You know, it's funny we just approved those minutes, right? 302. In the minutes, it was the night that Mr. Smith came and gave us that presentation on the bike path. I always thought he was
On the
a
report,
member
the
of
town,
that.
on the agenda, town administrator's report, it was going to be put off. We'll go into town business. Extension of CDM contract. I think that's been put off. Right, until next week. We'll have that, the 28th meeting. Okay, the discussion, no parking sign at Pond Street. Mr. Gifford?
Why didn't you just put the stop sign up?
Okay, on this, it's for a parking sign, no parking sign. And I think it's in front of you, ladies and gentlemen. It was recommended no parking on the northerly side of Beach Street, and we'll have a discussion with Mr. Gifford, because there's two on one decides no parking on either side, and that was by the chief of police, his designated Sergeant Park.
Yeah, if I could just briefly explain. I was
Yes.
asked to look at the intersection of Pond Street and Beach Street because they had trouble getting down there with an ambulance because of a vehicle being parked there. So that's what I did, and I recommended no parking from Pond Street to Circle Drive or to the corner. But the street that runs parallel with that, which is Roby Street, is posted no parking either side. They're both 18 feet wide. Pond Street is 14 feet wide. So either way, I realize why Roby Street is no parking on either side, because there's a lot of retaining walls there. They're all close to the road, so you really can't get off the road. Beach Street isn't quite the same.
So as a director, your recommendation would be?
My recommendation is no parking from Pond Street to Circle Drive, which is approximately 122 feet.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Snyder to have the parking just from Pond.
On the northerly side.
Northerly side, okay. That'll be the first recommendation. Second,
I seconded it.
Kara, second. And no question. Motion on the floor, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, poor man.
Open meet law?
You're not on overtime, are you?
I'm sorry?
You're not on overtime, are you? It's part of the flat fee.
Flat fee?
Yeah.
That's why he's here.
Mr. Chairman, you had asked me to put together a presentation on the open meeting law on the question of email communications. So I have a draft opinion which, if you would desire afterwards, I can circulate to the board so that you have it. Email communication and the open meeting law is a very sensitive topic. It wasn't the problem 20 years ago because the technology didn't exist. Back then, the problem was telephone calls and leaving messages on answering boxes and stuff like that. But the whole approach on email communication is it's not about restricting freedom of expression. The open meeting law is not about keeping people from expressing important policy viewpoints. It's about making sure that your opinions are channeled through acceptable channels, and that nobody suffers any harm from channeling it, so that the important points that you're going to make don't get lost in some sort of legal challenge. Now, I've reviewed the Attorney General guidelines. I've reviewed the Open Meeting Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18 through 25. And if I may, I'll just present my findings to you. I can't promise that it's going to be an exciting presentation at 10:30, but here we go.
I think we got about 10 minutes because
Well,
we're out of tape.
That is sure.
Well,
Okay.
oh, I can go longer
no,
then.
please.
All right. I write, you've asked for an opinion regarding the application of the open meeting law to electronic communications between members of the Board of Selectmen. Specifically, you ask whether the open meeting law prohibits email between a quorum of the members of the Board of Selectmen. In my opinion, email or other communication exchange sent or received by or among a quorum of the Board of Selectmen outside of a properly posted meeting violates the open meeting law if the subject matter of such communication relates to substantive as compared to ministerial matters. Thus, regardless of whether a substantive communication happens concurrently, such as an email addressed to all members of the board, or serially, such as an email between two selectmen then forwarded to a third, a fourth, or a fifth, if the communication has reached a quorum of the members of the board outside of a properly posted meeting, a violation of the open meeting law most likely will have occurred. The new version of the open meeting law, which took effect on July 1st, 2010, contains a definition of deliberation, which specifically includes a reference to email as follows, and I'll just cite from the statute. An oral or written communication through any medium, including electronic mail, between or among a quorum of a public body on any public business within its jurisdiction, provided, however, that deliberation shall not include the distribution of a meeting agenda, scheduling information, or distribution of other procedural meeting or distribution of reports or documents that may be discussed at a meeting, provided that no opinion of a member is expressed. So the question is, how do you interpret that definition of deliberation? Case law will eventually develop a pathway to interpreting the new open meeting law. Until that time, we may look to current Attorney General guidelines, as well as common law interpretations of analogous provisions of the previous version of the open meeting law. With respect to email, the Attorney General now advises as follows, and this is off of the Attorney General's website. The open meeting law defines deliberation as an oral or written communication through any medium, including electronic mail, between or among a quorum of a public body on any public business within its jurisdiction. Distributing a meeting agenda, scheduling, or procedural information or reports or documents that may be discussed at a meeting will not constitute deliberation so long as the material does not express the opinion of a member of the public body. Email exchanges between or among a quorum of members of a public body discussing matters within the body's jurisdiction may constitute deliberation, even where the sender of the email does not ask for a response from recipients. And then that's the Attorney General advisory. I go on to write, this interpretation is consistent with guidelines issued by various district attorneys and the Attorney General concerning the previous version of the open meeting law. They consistently took the position that an exchange of email concerning substantive matters among a quorum of members is a deliberation occurring outside of a properly posted meeting. Although district attorneys initially found a violation only if a member responded to an email sent to a quorum of the board, that position evolved to the point where they believed that even receipt of an email of a substantive nature by a quorum of the members of a governmental body, regardless of whether a response is made, constituted a violation of the open meeting law. This appears to be the position that the Attorney General has adopted in interpreting the new open meeting law. As to exceptions, there are a couple of them. First, the long-recognized exception to the requirements of the open meeting law that boards may undertake ministerial matters, such as scheduling meetings or requesting the inclusion of agenda items without holding a posted meeting. And then I cite to a case, Pearson versus Board of Selectmen of Longmeadow, in which the court recognized that ministerial tasks to be addressed in an open meeting law would cripple a board's ability to accomplish any business. The court stated, even assuming that the decisions to cancel a public meeting and call for and attend a private meeting were made, and those were the facts of that particular case, were made by a majority of the board, to require such ministerial acts as scheduling or canceling meetings to be decided in open meetings not only would be impractical, but also would put burdens on public servants not imposed by or within the purpose of the statute. To mandate a public meeting for each procedural or housekeeping decision would severely hamper a board's ability to perform its duties. Reflecting this history, and then this is my commentary, reflecting this history, the definition of deliberation of the new open meeting law now provides explicit direction to governmental bodies concerning the permitted use of email for scheduling, agenda items, and other ministerial matters. There's an additional exception. Emails to the entire board from a person not on the board, such as the town administrator, town council, or other staff, do not violate the open meeting law. However, the risk exists that in response to such an email, a board member might inadvertently push reply to all, thereby creating a violation of the open meeting law. Thus, each board member must act warily and exercise great caution when receiving any emails of an official nature. So, in conclusion, communications by members of governmental bodies outside of properly posted open meetings by email can create a risk of violation of the open meeting law. And just as a practical example, if you see communications that contain phrases in them like, and these should send off red flags, what do you think about? Or please get back to me about? Or I think that? Or why don't we try to do thus and so? When those types of phrases get used in an email, you're probably beginning to venture into dangerous waters. So to the extent that the board uses email for scheduling or other ministerial purposes, care should be taken to ensure that no substantive matters are addressed. Litigation challenging decisions of boards often include open meeting law and due process counts, which can distract the court from the actual matters at issue, and it makes it harder to defend the board's position. To protect the board from such claims, the work of the board should take place at properly posted meetings, and to the extent possible, any outside discussion should be avoided. I recommend that the board limit its use of email to ministerial matters such as scheduling and agenda requests. I recommend further that board members refrain from including in any emails any opinions, impressions, or experiences that may inform or give context to such requests as, for example, inclusion of such additional information may cause a violation of the open meeting law even when no response is sent. And so the Attorney General has adopted, in summary, the position that the district attorneys evolved over time, which was even if you send an email out to everyone and no one responds, and if that email is not limited to ministerial matters or scheduling and so forth, you run the risk of being found in violation of the open meeting law. Thank you.
Questions from the board?
And I'll be happy to put this on letterhead forward.
Well, yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think very briefly, Rich, the daily emails now seem to me that they would be a violation of the open meeting law. You don't get them every day like we do, but there are many matters that are in these packets that are mailed to us in a PDF file every day. Certainly more in violation of the opening meeting law than anything I've seen from other board members or the town administrator.
Well, I haven't come to...
you don't see those.
Yeah, I don't see them, and in fairness to everyone present, I haven't come to sit in judgment on any particular communication. All I'm saying is that you have to be very careful. I believe the Attorney General says that, for example, if somebody PDFs you a report, that's fine. When you view email as a substitute for the old-fashioned way of doing it, for example, when I was a selectman where, every selectman had a basket in the selectman's office and you went in every day or every couple days and you got your documents out of the basket. If you're treating email as we'll call it a virtual basket, and you're just receiving stuff that would have been in the old days in a basket, the AG seems to say that that's fine. But the risky thing is that if you're in your own mind thinking about a particular problem that you're dealing with, and you're sending along your impressions of the problem to other board members, perhaps suggesting solutions. You're basically sending your own mental fact-finding. You know, I'm trying to think of an appropriate way to put this. The AG is more likely than not going to take the position that by sending it, you're violating the open meeting law, and just by virtue of the fact that you're on the board and that you've received it, you know, even if you weren't expecting it, you know, even if you had a spam filter on your computer that failed that said, you know, I'm not getting emails from that Bowen guy, you know, all those things, you know, it's a problem, and the AG says technically you're in violation. So it's a real tough one. I can tell you it's something that I deal with in my own house. You know, my wife is on a school committee, and I don't think my newspaper reporters come here, so I don't think I'm burning anybody in the household. If I am, I'll paper it tomorrow. But you know, I'm always, you know, mentioning to my own wife on the school committee, you know, be very careful. This is a problem. You know, 10 years ago, the AGs would have said no problem, but you know, they've evolved it and they've made it stricter. So I think, you know, we just all have to be sensitive to that. That's all. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I do, Mr. Chair, just briefly. So, Mr. Bowen, if I wanted something on the agenda and just sent it to the chair and didn't give my opinion, just said, please put this sewer, you know, this street issue, whatever it is, please put this stop sign on the agenda as soon as possible. That's not a violation.
That's right.
But if I put my opinion that, you know, our constituents have been calling me, this is really important, this isn't something that we should ignore, and I sent it to the entire board, not just the chair, and said this needs to be on the agenda, that is a violation of open meeting law.
Yeah, I think at that point, you know, 10 years ago that would have been fine. I think nowadays with the way the AG is looking at the open meeting law and interpreting it, and it's right on the AG website in terms of recommendations, yeah, you're on the slippery slope. You know, so for example, I was very interested when there was the discussion of the library members, and I know Selectman Winslow was saying that, you know, somebody had sent along an application and she was going to forward it to the board later on. You know what? I think that's fine, because what Selectman Winslow is doing is that's basically an agenda item that you're going to have to take up, and that's informational. You know, presumably, you know, it's not going to say, I think, you know, this one and that one are great and that one's no good. I mean, that's not what I heard, and that's not what's going to happen. So when Ms. Winslow sends that email to you, that's in the nature of scheduling and taking care of agendas. But once you get into the position of expressing opinion to your fellow board members, it becomes dangerous. Now, that's not to suggest, and I certainly would never want to suggest, that a board member can't express his or her opinion in a public forum, at this meeting, through the press. That's all wide open, because it's out in public view. It's just, you know, the electronic transmissions, that it's an issue. And I just wanted you to be aware.
Mr. Chair, I mean, I honestly think that, you know, there's some board members that have issues with email, and maybe we need to not have email. I mean, it's great for the public and it's convenient for us, but if this is going to be a problem, then I think we should consider turning the email accounts off.
Mr. Chair, I think that's a little bit extreme.
No, I don't think it's extreme.
Yeah, it is, because I think we make our own problems. So we just got to be more cognizant of what we do.
Mr. Chair, I think that all of us try our very best to be as considerate of each other as we possibly can. The fact that other selectmen may be communicating with you about issues or with the town administrator about issues that the rest of the board may not be aware of is a problem to me. So if you can't enlighten the entire board to an issue that's been brought to your attention and we're going to start communicating, I have an issue with it, and I think maybe not tonight, it's late, but at some point I think we need to address the overall issue of it in a more detailed forum.
Yeah, in fact, I think it will be brought up sooner than later, but that'll be it. Any other questions? If not, thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Bowen.
Good night.
Mr. Campina. Can you do this in 10 minutes?
This was the easy one, right? We just wanted the shut-off date.
Yes, this was the shut-off, and all you needed was the letter from the Onset Water Department stating that the parking lot at Dunkin' Donuts was officially shut off, and that letter is there, so the abatement can be applied.
And this was shut off on October 10th of 2009?
Yes.
So 10/10 of 2010 was 1 full year?
Yes.
So they're due 8 months?
Well, the amount they were due back was $298 for the second half billing.
Okay.
So that's what they're getting back, and it was just a little bit of housekeeping. So that was pretty straightforward.
Okay, that's account number 738-206.
738-206, correct.
And your recommendation is
to the abatement for $298. We should give them the abatement. Absolutely.
I'm looking to the board.
So moved.
So move on Article 738-206. I need a second.
Second.
Second. Kara made a motion. Second by Ellen. Any questions? Motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous decision.
And I think the other thing was we have the second half omitted billing, and those are simply folks that couldn't be billed for the entire half. It was prorated stuff, so they're billed separately from the regular committed billing. So, excuse me, that second half omitted billing. So it's just a matter of we get the bills out with your approval, we'll commit it and get the bills out.
Any question from the board? You have motion?
Motion to approve the second half omitted commitment for the FY11 sewer user fee.
Motion by Mrs. Winslow.
Second.
Second by Mr. Snyder. Any questions? No question. Motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
400.
Motion to adjourn.
Wait, no, I think we have. Wait, no, we have two more, don't we?
Sorry. No, we're done. I just wanted to give one quick brief statement. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm meeting with Tech Environmental. They're our odor consultant. Also, Department of Environmental Protection. We have two neighbors on Linwood Ave that have had it with odors. It's been a 5-year problem for them. We're doing all we can. So, to me, the best thing to do at this point in time is to bring in an expert to do an odor quality of the area. Let's look at the impact that we really have, and then we can move forward, because one of them has threatened to obtain a lawyer and move forward. So I think the best interest of the community is to get an expert in there now and figure out what is really going on.
And you said that meeting is tomorrow?
Tomorrow. It'll be at 2:30 tomorrow at the treatment plant. Tech Environmental. The gentleman coming down is Michael Lannon. He's a principal in the company. He is a leading expert witness, part of the top 3 in the country. Very good company. I've taken some of his courses. He's well-versed, knowledgeable, and so he's going to tour the plant, tour the neighborhoods, make some solid recommendations, address the concerns of the neighborhood, and we'll move forward and we'll mitigate the situation and try to nip it in the bud before it progresses any further into the summer. So I just want the board to be aware.
Okay, thank you.
So if you see something, I don't want you to be blindsided, so I'll be working on that tomorrow.
And we're all set for Saturday?
And Saturday, we're all set. The letters have been out. They were sent out last Thursday. So we're ready for Saturday. I have, and I'll leave it with you, Mr. Chairman, the letter from Mr. Hicks, the attorney, is his actual cost, so you can add that to your file, along with CDM costs and the whole 9 yards. I'll leave that with you. This is the original. I have a copy. I'll leave you with the original,
okay.
So you can add that to your...
I'll make sure I turn it in tomorrow morning.
Okay, but I want you to have the original, and then we'll be ready for Saturday's meeting. Everybody's there. We have the hall the hall, down at the town
Auditorium.
hall, and we'll be there at 10 o'clock. See you all then.
Okay, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Appreciate your
Motion.
time.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion made.